Chapter 524. Tai-Fi hurriedly handed over the invitation cards when he saw Li Zongjio walk out. "Young master, these are the invitations from the princes." Li Zongjio flipped through the invitations casually before tossing them aside. "I'm not free." In the eyes of an outsider, any one of these invitations would be enough to make anyone envious. However, in Li Zongjio's opinion, these invitations were no different from trash. "Come find me if you have any matters to discuss. I've been rather busy lately," Li Zongjio said. After obtaining the demonic tuo flower, Li Zongjio would have to prepare to refine the elixir. Once the elixir was refined, he would have to undergo the final breakthrough at the Genius Pavilion. Therefore, he didn't have time to deal with these people. Everything would have to wait until he obtained the Universe 9 revolving needle. Li Zongjio also had to personally prepare some medicinal ingredients. Just the cash in his bosom alone exceeded 2 billion. With such a status, he could buy whatever he wanted. "Yes, young master," Tai-Fi said. Then, Li Zongjio left the Great Delight Casino. Although gathering forces was a very important matter, increasing one's strength was also of utmost importance. Li Zongjio was in the process of searching for some special medicinal ingredients in the market. Han Wuxiu arrived at a secret room. It was obvious that some people had come to secretly meet him. When he found out that these people had appeared, Han Wuxiu naturally felt more confident. He hadn't expected that Li Zongjio would be able to help him do a good deed. Not only would these people help him deal with Li Zongjio, but they would also reward him handsomely. How could Han Wuxiu refuse such a good thing? The Blood Strike Guard acts arrogantly. "As the commander, the greatest authority I have is to make you do things outside the city. Once you're done, leave the Sacred Flame Royal City immediately. Don't leave any traces behind. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite," Han Wuxiu said faintly. Han Wuxiu said faintly. At this moment, there were two other people sitting across the table in the secret chamber. "Don't worry, Sir Han. The Blood Strike Guard has always done things cleanly," the other person said. The light in the secret room was dim, so one couldn't see the other person's appearance clearly. However, the person sitting there gave off the feeling that a torrential blood was brewing. The saber on his waist also inadvertently revealed a trace of luster. 6 bronze. 6 bronze Blood Strike Guard. A mere Blood Strike Guard with 3 bronze ranks was already a Sky Origin ancestor. The people who had chased after the 3 bronze ranks had all been led by a Blood Strike Guard with 4 bronze ranks. The Blood Strike Guard had already tracked down Li Zongjio, who was in the city. If they couldn't bring back Li Zongjio's head, the Blood Strike Guard would lose all face. Therefore, they had sent a Blood Strike Guard with 6 bronze ranks to lead the team. One could imagine how terrifying the lineup below was. However, this wasn't within Han Wuxiu's consideration. He only needed to think of a way to lure Li Zongjio out and his mission would be considered complete. If he could see Li Zongjio die in front of him, he would definitely be very excited. "That's good. Where's my money?" Han Wuxiu asked. 10 mid-grade yuan stones. The other 10 will be handed over after the mission is completed. A burlap bag was pushed over to Han Wuxiu from the table. The Blood Strike Guard with 6 bronze ranks was expressionless, but anyone could sense the sinister aura emanating from him. A transaction like this was worth 20 mid-grade yuan stones. The value of these yuan stones wasn't something purple yuan could compare to. A low-grade yuan stone would normally be sold for 1 million to 5 million gold coins on the market. The value of a mid-grade yuan stone would be 100 times higher. However, the exchange rate between a low-grade yuan stone and a mid-grade yuan stone was 10:1. This was because every yuan stone had a different concentration of spirit energy. The difference in grade was only within a certain range. If the quality was good, the price would be even higher. If the quality wasn't good, the price would be greatly reduced. At the same time, mid-grade yuan stones were like grade 5 elixirs. They were both priceless. No one would be stupid enough to exchange yuan stones for money, as that wouldn't be worth it. Although these 20 mid-grade yuan stones weren't considered priceless, even some small families in third-grade cities wouldn't be able to fork out such a sum. It was obvious that the Blood Strike Guards had really put in a lot of effort. "Follow me out of the city at 8 o'clock tonight. I guarantee that you'll see Li Zongjio," If I don't receive anything after this, you'll have to wait and see. Han Wuxiu snorted coldly. When exchanging blows with these bloodstrike guards, he naturally had to muster up his aura. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to suppress these people with their overbearing auras. Then Han Wuxiu left the place. The conversation in the secret room didn't end just because Han Wuxiu left. The commander wants us to do it cleanly, another person said. He didn't have a saber at his waist, so it was difficult to tell what level he was at. However, the fact that he was able to stand on equal footing with the bloodstrike guards was enough to prove his strength. This person's status was definitely not inferior to the 6 bronze blood-robed guards. Don't worry, I know what to do. The 6 bronze blood-robed guards said. Li Zongjio didn't know that someone had already started to target him. They had even started to plot against him. They strolled around Royal City until the afternoon, when the sky gradually darkened. This trip was pretty good. They had prepared everything they needed. At the same time, Li Zongjio also went to find out more about the Spirit Stone market. A beginner grade 5 elixir can only be exchanged for a mid-grade Spirit Stone. I didn't know that Spirit Stones were so expensive these days. Li Zongjio couldn't help but exclaim. As one's cultivation progressed, elixirs could only be used as support. Yuan stones would become the mainstream. Of course, this wasn't because the elixir wasn't good enough, but because most people couldn't afford to consume it. They could only take one at a critical moment. This was because the absorption effect of the elixir was several times better than that of the Yuan stones. It seemed like he had to go somewhere to get some Yuan stones. Although he had killed Yi Lantian previously, there weren't many Yuan stones in Yi Lantian's storage ring. This was because Yi Lantian's cultivation wasn't high. He was only a first-grade Yuan monarch. Furthermore, most of his belongings were stored in his family's treasury. Who would carry them around all the time? This was obviously something that rarely happened. A mid-grade Yuan stone could even be absorbed by a primitive emperor. However, the value of a grade 6 elixir couldn't be measured by a grade 5 elixir. Even the current Nantian elixir king couldn't refine a grade 6 elixir. If the Nantian elixir king had such ability, he wouldn't be stuck in this state. Night fell. Li Zongjio followed the address on the express letter in the morning. He headed towards the Sky Horn Mountain. Chapter 525. The Heavenly Horn Mountain was covered in a thick fog. When Li Zongjio arrived at this place, he already felt a trace of strangeness. Since Huang He had already accepted this task, he must have made preparations. Therefore, it would be safer to stay in the city. If he was surrounded by people outside, he would probably be in a state of helplessness. Therefore, Li Zongjio guessed that there was something fishy going on. Since there was a trap, he wanted to see what kind of trap it was. It had been a long time since he last killed someone. His hands were itching. At 8 o'clock, a figure groped his way up the mountain. It wasn't Huang He, but an errand boy. He didn't seem to know what was going on here. He held a box in his hand and walked to Li Zongjio. Are you Li Zongjio, young Master Li? The errand boy asked softly. He was very careful with the box in his hand. It's me. Li Zongjio nodded. Boss Huang asked me to give this to you. My task is done. I'll take my leave. The errand boy handed the box to Li Zongjio. Then he turned around and rushed down the mountain. However, not long after, he heard the sound of blood splashing in the sky from the thick fog. When the blood splashed, Li Zongjio sensed that the other party had made a move. Boom! A sharp blade energy pierced through the thick fog and slashed toward Li Zongjio. The blade energy landed on the ground, causing a violent explosion. Li Zongjio gently tapped his foot and retreated. However, behind him, another blade net rushed toward Li Zongjio. The terrifying blade energy shrouded Li Zongjio. You're courting death. Keeping the box in his hand, Li Zongjio took out the Thunder Slayer blade and slashed behind him. Boom! The Thunder Slayer blade suddenly exploded with lightning. In an instant, the person who had rushed up from behind was pushed back. There were a total of 3 people behind Li Zongjio. Under this blade attack from Li Zongjio, they were forced to retreat. Their bodies landed on the ground as they retreated. However, at this moment, They forcefully stabilized their bodies and used the yuan power in their bodies to forcefully suppress the lightning energy in front of them. Li Zongjiu's casual move had forced them into such a state. It was indeed amazing. How audacious! You actually dared to ambush me. Li Zongjiu held the thunder/saber in his hand, and there was still no one around him. The enemy seemed to be observing Li Zongjiu in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to kill Li Zongjiu directly. The white fog was probably released by these people. Sure enough, it's the Thunder Cutter. Since he dared to take our Thunder Cutter, he should be prepared to be beheaded. A person walked out of the white fog. The matter of the thunder beheading saber had been delayed for a long time. The trash of the saber axe pavilion had actually lost such a precious saber. This was a great loss for the Bright Thunder Craftsman Workshop. As the blacksmith of the Bright Thunder Craftsman Workshop, he naturally had the responsibility to retrieve the Thunder Slayer blade. Beside that person was another person. Li Zongjiu saw the copper rings wrapped around the weapon of the other party. It was a 6 copper long blade with a blood edge. A 6 copper blood-robed guard. Oh, so it's the people from Qingyuan Villa. I was wondering why I felt so happy today. Li Zongjiu laughed when he saw these people. With a flick of his mental energy, he immediately dispelled the surrounding thick fog. Suddenly, a large number of figures appeared in the dense fog. When they saw these figures, they were shocked. No one had expected that there would be so many blood-robed guards hiding here. At a glance, one could tell that there were at least 100 blood-robed guards. It seemed like these people had put in a lot of effort to deal with Li Zongjiu. If they couldn't bring back Li Zongjiu's head this time, they wouldn't need to continue living here. The blood-robed guards might as well disband as soon as possible. Among these blood-robed guards, the weakest one was a 4 copper blood-robed guard. There were more than 100 ancestor Yuan powerhouses, and they were all filled with murderous intent. Even a Yuan monarch powerhouse would probably be exhausted to death by this lineup. In addition, the strength of the 6 copper blood-robed guard in front of them had already reached the Yuan monarch level. With such a lineup, they would be able to kill anyone who stood in their way. In the distance, Han Wuxiu and the others were also watching from afar. Han Wuxiu wasn't at ease because he was afraid of the other party's movements. Plus, he wanted to see Li Zongjiu die tragically before his eyes. Therefore he had to wait here. When he saw that the other party had actually prepared so many people, he was a little surprised. Damn it! They actually brought so many people. If this team infiltrated Monarch City, the destruction it would cause would be terrifying. It was easy to imagine that, apart from the most powerful family clans, the other family clans wouldn't be able to survive the next day if they wanted to destroy them. It would only take one night for this batch of blood-robed guards to wipe them all out. The cold-blooded assassin squad that Qingyuan Manor had spent a huge amount of money to nurture wasn't just for show. Just counting the number of people was enough to make Han Wuxiu's scalp go numb. However, this is good too. I want to see how you will escape this time. Sometimes, you don't have to do it yourself to kill someone. You want to fight me, Li Zongjiu? You are still too inexperienced. Han Wuxiu sneered inwardly. This scene somewhat exceeded Li Zongjiu's expectations. It was obvious that these people had been lying in ambush for a long time. However, due to the white fog, Li Zongjiu hadn't sensed their presence. It seemed like these blood-robed guards had some pretty strong methods. Even so, there was only one outcome. Without waiting for the 6 bronze blood-robed guards to give the order, Li Zongjiu took the lead and charged towards a relatively weaker area with the thunder-slashing blade in hand after clearly seeing the formation of these people. Boom! The power of lightning was frantically released from the thunder-beheading blade. It looked like a terrifying lightning spider web as it flew towards these people. Boom! The frightening power of the lightning instantly fell on the bodies of the 5 blood strike guards, who were all 4 bronze-ranked blood strike guards. They had been through hundreds of battles and killed people like flies. However, the power of lightning was too overbearing. Even though they had mustered all their strength, they were still sent flying. When the power of lightning struck their bodies, a tiny bolt of lightning struck their chests. Boom! The 5 of them were instantly sent flying as wisps of black smoke rose from their chests. They fell to the ground and didn't struggle to get up. Chapter 526. Li Zongjio didn't even look at the effect of his slash. Instead, he charged towards the others. Formation. Killing revolving sky formation. The Blood Robe Guard ordered. Immediately, the Blood Robe Guards arranged themselves into a circular formation. As they spun, they closed in on Li Zongjio, surrounded by terrifying murderous auras. Boom! Boom! A total of 5 killing formations spun rapidly towards Li Zongjio. It was hard to tell if they were real or fake blade auras, but in reality, dozens of blade auras landed on Li Zongjio's body every second. Li Zongjio smiled coldly. Save these tricks for fools. In terms of combat experience, Li Zongjio had more combat experience than everyone present combined. Therefore, how could a small formation trap Li Zongjio? Even if the formation was profound, the strength of these people was too weak. Obsidian fire. Black dazzling flames lingered on the tip of his blade as Li Zongjio directly charged towards one of the killing arrays. Without the slightest bit of fear, the blade in his hand slashed down. Before the other party could touch Li Zongjio, the blade had already slashed down and directly shattered the blade array. Bang! Several figures flew out. Some of them still had traces of flames lingering on their bodies. At first, they thought that the flames could be extinguished with a casual slap, but they were shocked to find that the flames were constantly drilling into their bodies. No! Finally, the blazing heat swept over them, and they instantly lost their will to fight. They fell to the ground and struggled non-stop. In the end, they were completely burned, leaving not a single trace behind. The rest of the people were secretly shocked when they saw this scene. The flames were so difficult to deal with. Coupled with the power of the thunder/blade, almost no one could get close to it. A few air-piercing sounds could be heard in the air. Then, a few terrifying energy fluctuations could be seen approaching them. Swoosh! It was the sound of an arrow piercing through the air. Li Zongjio had no time to dodge. After all, his opponent could be said to be a veteran. Thus, his timing was very accurate. It was exactly the moment when Li Zongjio's origin power stopped circulating, and he finally made his move. Furthermore, the one who made this move was a blood-robed guard with 5 bronze ranks. Amidst the chaos, the 3 blood uniform guards seized the opportunity and shot an arrow at Li Zongjio. 2 of the arrows were dodged by Li Zongjio, but he was still in the path of the 3rd arrow. Clang! The arrow instantly hit Li Zongjio's shoulder. The arrowhead instantly shattered. The rest of the force was directly injected into Li Zongjio's body. This arrow was specially made. In order to prevent it from being blocked when it was shot, at the moment of collision, all the force would be released and the arrow would turn into powder. Therefore, once you were stabbed, there was basically no chance of dodging. Li Zongjio retreated. Even he felt a sharp pain. His shoulder felt like it was about to be dislocated. However, Li Zongjio's physical body was very strong, so he gradually recovered from the pain. However, the look in his eyes gradually changed. Very good. The crowd instantly locked onto the person who had shot the arrow. Even that person had a shocked expression on his face. His arrow just now was enough to pierce through the body of a 4th-order origin beast, but Li Zongjio seemed to be completely unharmed. Even if there was armor, there shouldn't be armor at the shoulder where he had shot. With such rich combat experience, how could he make such a mistake? Just as he was looking at Li Zongjio in shock, his eyes met with Li Zongjio's half-smile. Not good. In the next moment, Li Zongjio threw the Thunder Slayer blade in his hand. The blood-robed guards along the way were sent flying by the power of the Thunder Slayer blade. Even if they wanted to block it, it was simply too late. Li Zongjio tapped his foot and chased after the Thunder Slayer blade. Everyone stay calm. The blood-robed guard shouted in a low voice. Suddenly, a strand of Yuan's spirit energy surged around him. It was a blood-colored dart frog. The dart frog was very fast and had a strong explosive power. When the latter drew the bow and knocked the arrow, the dart frog directly jumped on the arrow. As the arrow was shot, it hit the Thunderslash blade with a bang, sending the Thunderslash blade flying tens of meters away. The dart frog jumped over the terrifying lightning and rushed toward Li Zongjio. However, Li Zongjio was clearly not afraid of the dart frog. When the dart frog rushed over, Li Zongjio grabbed the dart frog in his hand. Smith. The dart frog in his hand was thrown to the ground and he fainted. When the blood-robed guard saw this, he felt dizzy. He grabbed the dagger in his hand and prepared to fight in close combat. However, he suddenly felt that the longbow in his hand was snatched away. His longbow was specially made. People with insufficient arm strength would not be able to draw it. The blood-robed guard knew that Li Zongjio had closed in on him. But now it was too late. The other party had already pressed the bow against his neck. As for him, he pulled the bowstring to an extremely exaggerated state and then gently released it. Puff! The bowstring was instantly pulled back. It directly cut off the blood-robed guard's neck in an extremely smooth manner. Plop! The blood-robed guard's head fell to the ground and splashed Li Zongjio's body. This was the first time a blood-robed guard had been killed since the start of the battle. Everyone present was shocked by his words. Everyone's eyes widened as they watched the scene unfold before them in disbelief. The blood-robed guard was a powerful late-stage origin ancestor and had obtained the power of an Yuan spirit. Under such circumstances, his combat strength was naturally extraordinary. This showed how terrifying these people's strength was. However, even such a terrifying person had been killed by Li Zongjio. Everyone instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at the saber formations from before, they were unable to trap Li Zongjio. The 6 copper blood-robed guard leader's dark eyes swept over the people in front of him upon seeing this. He immediately stood up. The blood blade in his hand was unsheathed. It was like a terrifying blood python that came entangling. Immediately, it was accompanied by an aura that could cover the sky and the earth as it charged over. He was a true Yuan monarch. Obviously, even the blood-robed guard could not bear the loss of a blood-robed guard. After all, it was not easy to nurture these blood-robed guards. If they were easily killed by Li Zongjio, then even if this mission was a success, it would at most be considered a miserable one. The blood python flew towards Li Zongjio. Its terrifying aura seemed to be able to swallow the heavens and earth. It suddenly approached and landed in front of Li Zongjio in an instant. Boom! Chapter 527. The blood python descended from the sky and pounced. With a loud bang, it swallowed Li Zongjio whole. Everyone present was shocked when they saw this scene. Even with Li Zongjio's strength, he still did not have the slightest ability to fight back against the 6 copper blood strike guard. This troublesome opponent was finally dealt with. Han Wuxiu, who was watching from a distant mountain peak, was overjoyed. That damned bastard was finally subdued by his opponent. Otherwise, he would really think that he was invincible. Hee, what a miserable ending. The corners of Han Wuxiu's mouth curled into a sneer. Even if he did not have to personally take revenge, he still felt very satisfied. So what if you were arrogant and egotistical before? Since you have offended me, you can only be beheaded and obediently accept your death. However, Han Wuxiu's smile did not last long. He saw the blood python's stomach suddenly explode. It seemed like a dragon's claw had torn the blood python's stomach apart. The dragon's claw was in the sky, and its terrifying aura was shocking. Even the 6 bronze blood guards widened their eyes as they watched the scene unfold in front of them in disbelief. The blood python's stomach was easily cut into 2 halves, and an aura of violence and death spread out. Soon after, a figure of a blood dragon appeared with a person wrapped around it. The blood python, which had fallen to the ground, was constantly struggling. It seemed to be in extreme pain, and its body was constantly stretching and rolling on the ground. What is that? All the blood strike guards and the blacksmith of the Bright Lightning Workshop widened their eyes as they stared at the thing wrapped around Li Zongjio's body. If they were not mistaken, it should be a dragon. Dragon? How could it be? Could it be that Li Zongjio already had the strength to kill the Dragon Clan? He had actually refined the power of the Dragon Clan into his own original spirit power. This was simply too terrifying. However, this was indeed the case. It was not a simple Yuan beast of the inferior Dragon Clan that only possessed the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. It was a truly terrifying Dragon Clan. The Dragon Clan that only existed in legends. Dragon Clan's original spirit. How is this possible? When Han Wuxiu saw the blood dragon that had broken free, its ferocious face and its pure, bloody aura, they were deeply shocked. They did not expect Li Zongjio to possess the original spirit of the Dragon Clan. What did this mean? It meant that Li Zongjio's strength was incomparably powerful. Just the power of his Yuan spirit alone was already superior to others. Seeing such a situation, he was naturally shocked. Being able to possess the dragon tribe as an Yuan spirit was sufficient to show just how frightening Li Zongjio's background was. Moreover, his frightening talent was indeed frightening. Such strength indeed caused one to be shocked in their hearts, and also caused one to become even more jealous. Han Wuxiu stared at Li Zongjio. No, we must kill Li Zongjio. We must kill him. We must not allow such a monstrous person to live in this world. Han Wuxiu was already prepared. If these people could not deal with Li Zongjio, he would do it himself. After a bitter battle, how could Li Zongjio be unscathed? When the time came, he would rush up and cut off Li Zongjio's head and ruthlessly step on it. This was his goal. You won't live for long, Li Zongjio. So what if you have the original spirit of the Dragon Clan? If you die, you will only be a pile of bones. Only those who are alive can be called experts. Han Wuxiu's eyes were extremely gloomy. However, just as his eyes were filled with murderous intent and he was imagining killing Li Zongjio and stepping on him, Li Zongjio had already begun to fight back. The blood dragon Yuan spirit had already appeared and tore the blood python into pieces. Under such circumstances, there was no need for much words. The 6 bronze blood strike guard already knew that he was in big trouble. Li Zongjio leaped up and the Thunder Slayer blade in his hand brewed a terrifying blood thunderbolt. Boom! The scarlet power of the thunderbolt spread all over the ground. It spread like a spider web and filled the entire ground, condensing into a terrifying aura. Rumble! This move wasn't just aimed at the 6 copper blood strike guard. The surrounding blood strike guards were also sent flying. Boom! These people were sent flying in an instant. The blood strike guards had no way of resisting this terrifying thunderbolt. The blacksmith of the Bright Thunder Craftsman workshop was shocked when he saw this scene. He can actually trigger the hidden attribute of the Thunder Slayer blade. Where did this person come from? Is he a natural weapon master? In the world of blacksmiths, there was a type of person known as a weapon master. They were able to use any new weapon as if they were born psychic. They were able to unleash the power of every weapon to the extreme and develop various hidden attributes. They were quite powerful. Seeing Li Zongjio actually trigger the hidden attribute of the Thunder Slayer blade, the blacksmith was shocked. He was also extremely shocked. This attribute had never been identified, and even the blacksmith himself wasn't sure if it had such an effect. It was a combination with the attribute of the origin power that was used, resulting in an even more powerful amplification effect. In the end, it would cause such a collision. When the blood thunderbolt appeared, the only blacksmith present who knew the trade already knew that it was impossible. Identifying a weapon's attributes required a lot of conditions and countless experiments. Only then would it be possible. Looking at the abundant thunderbolt power on the Thunder Slayer blade, one could tell that it had only been used a few times. If it wanted to continue displaying its power, it would have to be injected with energy again. Li Zongjio was able to find the hidden attribute and activate it after using the Thunder Slayer blade a few times. Obviously, his strength was very terrifying. One of the blood thunderbolts rushed toward the blacksmith. On the other hand, the blacksmith was incredibly calm. He gently waved his hand to suppress the power, and the blood thunderbolt power seemed to have been attracted to him as it wrapped around his wrist. The rest of the people did not fare so well. Most of them were directly sent flying. His body was covered with fatal wounds, and he had been blasted clean. The moment the blood thunderbolt wrapped around their bodies, the blood in their bodies was directly burned up. The blood strike guard with the long saber in his hand blocked in front of him. The surrounding power surged out in all directions. When the blood thunderbolt was released, the blacksmith saw that his body was covered with wounds. Li Zongjio's figure appeared in front of the blood strike guard. To be able to force me to this point, your death is worth it. The 6 bronze bloodstrike guards' eyes emitted a terrifying glow. Chapter 528. His gaze suddenly became sharp, and the surrounding atmosphere also became extremely terrifying at this moment. Li Zongjio stood where he was, not panicking at all. He gazed at the 6 copper blood-robed guards. When he saw them again, he saw that the corpse of the blood python at his feet had gradually turned into a pool of blood and merged into the opponent's body. Li Zongjio saw this scene and felt that it was a little interesting. First of all, the origin spirit would not die. Unless the host died, the origin spirit itself was a kind of energy that the origin beast entrusted to the host. As long as the host was alive, this energy was equivalent to endless. However, the degree of injury was different every time, so the recovery time and speed would be different. Sometimes, it would even take 10 or 20 years to recover. In this kind of situation, once the origin spirit was in an injured state and in a spiritual state, there was no way to display any effect. However, looking at the situation of the 6 copper blood-robed guard in front of him, it seemed to be directly absorbing energy from the origin spirit's remaining spiritual power. This was almost overdrafting the origin spirit's power. It was clearly seriously injured, but it did not let the origin spirit enter a state of automatic recovery. Instead, it absorbed all the remaining power. In this way, it strengthened its own state. He felt the 6 copper blood-robed guard's aura become stronger. Li Zongjio also nodded his head slightly. Although such a method could kill 1,000 enemies, it would also cause 800 casualties. However, it was also a more sensible method. Compared to the origin spirit's life, of course, his own life was more important. Eat my blade. Blood python slash. Immediately, the 6 copper blood-robed guard roared, and the long blade in his hand suddenly slashed toward Li Zongjio. That terrifying power instantly erupted. It rushed forward like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Boom! The thunder slash blade in Li Zongjio's hand fell to the ground. Suddenly, a terrifying thunderbolt power burst out, diffusing out. From afar, it looked like a thunderbolt ball that suddenly protected Li Zongjio. The blood python slash brought along a terrifying power as it smashed into the lightning defensive barrier. Bang! When the two sides collided, lightning instantly spread out in all directions. They flew in all directions. The power of the blood python had also disappeared. Clearly, this move was also a draw. The ground where Li Zongjio had been standing had already turned into ruins. However, there was no sign of Li Zongjio's corpse, so the bloodstrike guards immediately started looking around. Li Zongjio was nowhere to be found. Take my blade as well. Suddenly, a voice came from the sky. Then, Li Zongjio's figure fell from the sky, and the long saber in his hand slashed down fiercely. What? The 6 bronze blood-robed guard raised his head and looked at Li Zongjio, who was descending from the sky. When did he rush up to the sky? Now that he had jumped down, wouldn't that be taking his life? He had just made a move, and his strength had not yet recovered. Facing Li Zongjio's sure-kill attack, there was no way for him to dodge. Thunder's sealing saber case. Just as Li Zongjio was about to split the 6 bronze blood-robed guard in half, a voice came from the side. In an instant, there seemed to be something falling on the thunder slash blade. Then, all the lightning energy on the thunder slash blade was withdrawn at this moment. Buzz. In the next moment, the thunder slash blade let out a whistling sound and left Li Zongjio's hand, flying to the side. Li Zongjio, who had lost the thunder beheading blade, was surprised for a moment. However, he quickly adjusted himself and landed on the 6 bronze blood-robed guard's head with his palm. Boom! Li Zongjio's palm contained hidden power. When this power surged into the 6 bronze blood-robed guard's body, his head did not suffer any damage. However, the area below his neck seemed to have been torn to pieces by countless barbed wires in the air. It was smashed to pieces. This? Fuck! The surrounding blood-robed guards gasped. As blood-robed guards, they had seen all kinds of bloody scenes. However, this was the first time they had seen someone killed like this. They were blood-robed guards, but they were also human beings. When they saw something that exceeded their limits, they would feel shocked and scared. Li Zongjio lifted the 6 bronze blood-robed guard's head with one hand and turned to look at a gray-robed middle-aged man not far away. He was slowly putting the thunder beheading blade into a box. It was this fella who had taken the thunder beheading blade back. He should have come from the Radiant Thunder workshop. Judging from his aura, he should be a blacksmith. When the blacksmith saw Li Zongjio's gaze, he actually felt a little nervous. This thunder beheading blade originally belonged to the Radiant Thunder workshop. I took it back in accordance with the rules of the underworld. You can solve your own problems. I just came to take back the thunder beheading blade. The middle-aged man wanted to forcefully explain. After all, the strongest 6 bronze blood-robed guard had been killed. If he didn't leave now, he would probably be killed by Li Zongjio. Who would have thought that this kid would actually be so strong? He had actually killed the 6 bronze blood-robed guard. Now, only the head was left. The outcome was really tragic. Look at me. Do I look like the kind of person who is easy to talk to? Li Zongjio smiled faintly. In the next moment, an ominous glint appeared in his eyes. The blood soul plane. All the blood-robed guards present were included. The blacksmith also wanted to escape, but there was no way for him to do so. His surroundings had already turned into a blood-red environment. At the same time, a terrifying and manic atmosphere filled the place. A blood-curdling scream was heard from the blood-red world. Then more screams were heard. One by one they fell to the ground. The surrounding scarlet color became more and more intense. Not good. The gray-robed middle-aged man felt the aura around him. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly realized that a figure had appeared in front of him. It was Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio's figure flashed out and grabbed the gray-robed middle-aged man's neck. He stared at the gray-robed middle-aged man in front of him. The feeling of death is very good, isn't it? The corners of Li Zongjio's mouth curled up. This time, these people from Qingyuan Villa had really provoked Li Zongjio. They had actually dared to set up an ambush against him. The nature of this situation was different. Previously, Li Zongjio had approached these people to try his luck and adjust his mood. However, these people had taken the initiative to come to him. This was a real provocation to Li Zongjio. Since they wanted to become enemies with Li Zongjio, they had to be prepared to be killed. He stretched out his hand and waved. In the surrounding blood-red space, several lines of blood immediately appeared and landed on the gray-robed middle-aged man's body. Suddenly, the gray-robed middle-aged man looked as if he had been pierced by countless blood arrows. They continuously connected the blood vessels all over his body and continuously transmitted the blood from his body. Chapter 529. Without a doubt, this process was extremely painful. It was as if every bone in their bodies had been pulled out. As their blood flowed out, their bodies shriveled up. They could feel the blood in their bodies disappearing and how terrifying Li Zongjio was. As their blood flowed out, the surrounding aura of the blood spirit world became even more ferocious. None of the blood strike guards were able to break through the blood spirit world, and the power in their bodies was slowly draining away. They actually had no way of resisting it. This strange power seems to want to devour me. One of the guards shouted as he knelt on the ground. Now he was only left with this low growl. As the power of the blood spirit world continued to increase, it absorbed a lot of the aura of the blood spirit world. Eventually, the blood in his body was also forcefully sucked into the blood spirit world. Buzz. One of the guards spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was plastered to the ground as the blood in his body was frantically being absorbed. A pile of white bones appeared on the ground, but the bones were soon consumed. It was as if the blood spirit world was a huge stomach that was constantly digesting things that contained flesh and blood. There were so many blood strike guards present, but not a single one of them had been able to escape. In everyone's opinion, such a situation was impossible. Let's gather the remaining forces and kill our way out. A 5 bronze blood strike guard immediately called for the rest of the guards to gather around. There were still a dozen or so people left. At this moment, they were gathered together in a scattered manner. However, they still looked very miserable. All of their faces were pale. Gather your vital energy and blood into my body. I will use my bow and arrow to open a path. Although most of the Bloodstrike guards hesitated when they heard this, now wasn't the time to be indecisive. After all, this was only a little bit of power left in their bodies. If they were to send it out, it would definitely speed up their deaths. They estimated that they wouldn't last more than a few minutes in the blood spirit world before dying. However, unity was their only hope right now. Bang, bang, bang. Everyone channeled their vital energy and blood into the 5 bronze Bloodstrike guards' body one by one. Immediately, an incomparably terrifying aura erupted from the blood-robed guard's body. Just as the aura of the 5 bronze blood-robed guards reached a terrifying state, evil smiles appeared on their faces, which were facing away from the crowd. Thank you for your support. I will go back and report your contributions. The 5th bronze blood-robed guard sneered and unexpectedly used his power to shake off the people in front of him. At the same time, he also flew into the distance. He was holding a black iron ball in his hand. Immediately, he threw the metal ball in his hand forward. Boom! This was a heaven-quaking thunder. The blood spirit world was forcefully torn apart because of the terrifying power contained in this heaven-quaking thunder. It was none other than the blood essence he had plundered from the Bloodstrike guards. With a whooshing sound, the blood-robed guard's figure flew out. What? Damn it! Get me out of here! Not. The blood-robed guards were already in danger. However, he did not expect that he would end up in such a state. It was obvious that another batch of leaks had been harvested from them. I don't want to die here. No, let us go, please let us go. Their professionalism was useless here. As long as they could give them a chance to live, they would do anything. And a miracle happened at this very moment. They could clearly feel the blood essence in their bodies stop flowing. At this moment, he was slowly recovering. If you don't want to die, then capture that kid first. Li Zhongjio's figure had appeared in front of them without them noticing. Li Zhongjio appeared like a god, easily controlling their fates. Some of them immediately knelt down. Please have mercy, sir. Let us go. Sir, please spare our lives. We had no choice. We didn't want to come. The Bloodstrike guards were all clear-headed. They knew that they would die with a single slash. It would be fine if their heads were chopped off with a single slash, but using this thing to slowly strip the blood from their bodies was too frightening. Nobody wanted to experience this feeling of slowly losing their blood. Therefore, they immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. In comparison, kneeling down and begging for mercy was much easier. Whoever can kill the one who escaped, I'll let you live. If you want to escape, you can go ahead and escape. The corners of Li Zhongjio's mouth curled up slightly. There was a reason why he was called the Evil Lord. Immediately, Li Zhongjio opened up a hole in the blood spirit world and sent out all the people who had been cheated of their blood and chi energy. There were about 20 of them. The blood-robed guard, who had just escaped with great difficulty, was overjoyed when he rushed out of the blood spirit plane. It was as if he had been reborn. When he landed on the ground, he hurriedly took out a few elixirs from his storage ring and stuffed them into his mouth. It was better to remain calm at such a crucial moment. Otherwise, how could he have thought of such a good idea? Just thinking about it made him feel that he was too smart. When he sensed that he had recovered some of his strength, the blood-robed guard didn't think about taking revenge. Given the current situation, it was better to escape as soon as possible. However, just as the blood-robed guard was about to leave, he felt a pair of eyes behind him. However, he felt that there were a few more pairs of eyes behind him. He couldn't help but look behind him. Immediately, he saw dozens of ferocious eyes staring at him. Weren't these people the ones he had cheated? How was this possible? How could Li Zhongjio release all these people so quickly? Li Zhongjio was too bold. This really shocked him. He couldn't believe it. Was Li Zhongjio a fool? Wasn't he afraid that these people would run away? Since you're all out, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and run. He definitely won't be able to catch you. The blood-robed guard continued to come up with rotten ideas. Unfortunately, he could have chosen to trust Li Zhongjio. However, it seemed that he couldn't continue to be cheated. Brothers, kill him. Chapter 5:30. These Bloodstrike guards were bloodthirsty by nature, so they had placed their trust in Luo Yunyang during such a critical moment. However, Luo Yunyang had actually used such a method to slap them in the face and completely obliterate what little trust they had left. Under these circumstances, Luo Yunyang would be able to enjoy the bloody massacre of these crazy Bloodstrike guards if he had the chance. Kill! Their killing intent soared to the sky. None of the blood-robed guards chose to flee. Instead, they all charged forward. The blood-robed guard with 5 bronze ranks immediately took out his bow and shot out a few arrows. After killing a few people, the others closed in on them. When they got closer, the 5 bronze Bloodstrike guard unsheathed a dagger and chopped off several heads. He effortlessly chopped off the heads of a few people. Under the great shock of his elemental energy, it seemed as if he wanted to send the people around him flying. However, these bloodthirsty Bloodstrike guards didn't show any fear. They had already died once anyway. Even if they had to die this time, they would still capture the person before them. No matter what, they had to find a scapegoat. A frantic massacre was ongoing. Han Wuxiu, who was on the mountain in the distance, was clearly a little bewildered when he saw this scene. How could they have suddenly started killing each other? Could it be that these people in front of him had already been instigated by Li Zongjiu under such circumstances? Li Zongjiu was simply too resourceful. He actually possessed this kind of strength. Damn it! How could this be? Son of a bitch! Do we still want to kill our way out? Han Wuxiu started to hesitate when he saw that Li Zongjiu actually possessed such a strange method. After all, Li Zongjiu was extremely vicious and had many sinister methods. They hadn't brought many people with them this time. Although they were enough to protect themselves, they were still far from enough to kill Li Zongjiu. Furthermore, Han Wuxiu had yet to see what kind of injuries Li Zongjiu had sustained. Therefore, Han Wuxiu was already thinking of retreating. If he retreated now, he could wait until later and slowly find an opportunity to kill Li Zongjiu. Revenge wasn't something that could be rushed. Yes, this matter can't be rushed. Let's retreat for now. As Han Wuxiu was thinking this, he suddenly saw a figure appear in front of him. Suddenly he saw Li Zongjiu's figure reappear in the distance. Furthermore, Han Wuxiu noticed that Li Zongjiu was looking at him. What? He saw me. Han Wuxiu's heart skipped a beat. At such a far distance, Han Wuxiu didn't even use his elemental energy. Instead, he used something called a telescope, which could help people see things 10 miles away. In the end, when he saw Li Zongjiu's gaze, Han Wuxiu was so shocked that he broke out in cold sweat. Retreat. Return to the city. If Li Zongjiu killed all those people, Han Wuxiu would be next. Although he wasn't sure if Li Zongjiu really saw him, Han Wuxiu had a bad feeling about it. He immediately waved his hand and prepared to leave with his subordinates. However, when he turned around, he felt a ray of moonlight shining down from the sky. When he landed on the ground, Han Wuxiu couldn't help but take a look at the ground. A majestic figure appeared on the ground. What is this? Just as this question arose, an incomparably terrifying power was suddenly released and descended from the sky. It was accompanied by the howl of a wild wolf. Roar! The howling moon wolf king roared and descended from the sky. Its claws landed on the ground and directly grabbed Han Wuxiu, who was in front of it, and sent him flying. Bang! Han Wuxiu was lying on the ground, unable to move. The armor on his body was already in tatters. Everyone in the Special Envoy department was shocked when they saw this scene. However, in the next moment, the shadow of death loomed over their heads. Swoosh! The wolf's tail swept furiously and instantly sent the surrounding Special Envoys flying. One of them reacted quickly and was in a better position. He saw the opportunity and immediately pounced on the Howling Moon Wolf King. Then, the sharp sword in his hand slashed the Howling Moon Wolf King's waist. Originally, he thought that if he slashed down with his sword, he should be able to injure the Howling Moon Wolf King. However, the final result was also unexpected. The Howling Moon Wolf King's body was completely unharmed. On the other hand, the person who slashed the sword was directly hit by the terrifying rebounding force. Then, his wrist was shaken until it was about to break. In the end, the sword in his hand flew out of his hand with a swoosh. Damn it! The person who slashed the sword fell to the ground and cursed. Then he saw the Howling Moon Wolf King's body turn around. Then, the Howling Moon Wolf King bit the person's head off. Only the lower half of the person's body was left on the ground, spurting blood like a fountain. Damn it! Han Wuxiu, who had just regained his senses, could not help but curse when he saw the bloody scene. Immediately, his figure dashed downwards at lightning speed. The subordinates that he had brought along were all killed by the Howling Moon Wolf King in less than half a minute. How could he be so unlucky to be ambushed by a king-level origin beast? Han Wuxiu looked back as he ran. Coincidentally, the Howling Moon Wolf King raised its head and directly threw the last person into its mouth. After chewing, it slowly swallowed. In fact, one could even faintly see an eyeball pop out from the gap between its teeth. Han Wuxiu happened to see this cruel scene. In addition to the severe injuries he had suffered, his legs went numb. He staggered and directly rolled forward. Plop! When he rolled to the bottom of the slope, he saw a figure standing in front of him. Save me! Save me! Han Wuxiu saw that the person who came was a middle-aged man. If he appeared at this place at this time, he must have someone to rely on. It seemed like he had found his savior this time. Han Wuxiu hurriedly pulled the middle-aged man's sleeve and said, don't worry. You won't die so quickly." When Ying Hu saw Han Wuxiu, the corners of his mouth curled up. Ying Hu had been in Royal City for so many years. How could he not know Han Wuxiu's name? Therefore, when he saw this high and mighty person asking him for help, Ying Hu felt a special kind of joy in his heart. In the past, if he saw these people, he would tuck his tail and take a detour. Chapter 5:31. At the foot of the Heavenly Horn Mountain. The 5th-grade blood-robed guard was worthy of being called the King of Assassins. To be able to reach the position of 5th bronze, he was not bragging for nothing. Although his body was covered in blood and wounds, he had killed all of his former subordinates. At this moment he was still alive, sitting on the ground. Looking at the scene of corpses and bones, he finally felt relieved. However, he looked at Li Zongjio, who was walking over. The 5th bronze blood-robed guard had already given up on the idea of leaving alive. Over the years, he had seen all kinds of people. Now that he saw Li Zongjio's appearance, he knew that he would not be able to survive today. Everyone had become playthings in Li Zongjio's hands, and Li Zongjio was able to toy with them easily. Such an enemy was too terrifying. "Who are you?" The 5th bronze blood-robed guard looked at Li Zongjio in front of him and asked with difficulty. However, when he heard Li Zongjio's answer, he could no longer hold on. His neck tilted and he died. After struggling for so long, he could finally have a good rest. Looking at the last person who had breathed his last, he looked back at the corpses around him. Li Zongjio was quite satisfied with such an outcome. At the very least, a great show of this level was playing out in front of him. This made Li Zongjio feel much better. The lightning blade scabbard was also opened. When the lightning slash blade was taken out, Li Zongjio discovered that the power of the lightning slash blade seemed to have increased. This made Li Zongjio suspicious. Could it be that the lightning blade scabbard had the effect of charging the lightning slash blade? That's right. Usually, the thunder-slaying blade was stored in the thunder-sealing blade scabbard. The creation of the wind and thunder scabbard was extraordinary. The craftsmanship required to forge it was not inferior to that of the thunder-slashing blade. Originally, the blacksmith of the Bright Thunder Craftsman workshop came here to take back the thunder beheading saber. If there was any damage to the thunder beheading saber, it only needed to be placed in the thunder beheading saber case to recover. Therefore, they brought the thunder-slashing saber with them. However, they didn't expect that not only did they fail to retrieve the thunder-slashing saber, but the thunder-sealing saber case was also taken away by the other party. Not only that, they even lost their lives for nothing. How could they accept such an outcome? When the Bright Lightning Craftsman workshop heard the news, they would definitely go crazy. Whoosh whoosh. One man and one wolf landed in front of Li Zongjio. Shadow Fox landed on the ground and looked at Li Zongjio, then at the many corpses at his feet. Judging by their attire, they were all Bloodstrike guards. "Young master, This indescribable shock was written all over Inghu's face. There were so many corpses, and the one closest to them was actually a 5th bronze blood-robed guard. 5 bronze rank. That was quite powerful. When Shadow Fox saw the insignia of the 5th bronze blood-robed guard, his eyes widened and he sucked in a breath of cold air. My God, young master, where are the people I asked you to capture? Li Zongjio waved his hand disdainfully. So what if he killed these Bloodstrike guards? He had killed a lot of people. The Howling Moon Wolf King immediately stepped forward and swung his tail, throwing a figure to the ground. Han Wuxiu was badly beaten. He rolled a few times and finally stopped in front of Li Zongjio. He raised his head and looked at Li Zongjio with his dying breath. He couldn't believe it. That terrifying Wolf King was actually Li Zongjio's man. Following Li Zongjio's orders was simply too shocking for Han Wuxiu. So you're the one behind this? I told you to stay away from me. Why didn't you listen? Honest advice is unpleasant to the ear, isn't it? Li Zongjio squatted in front of Han Wuxiu and patted his face. Han Wuxiu felt powerless. He couldn't resist Li Zongjio at all. Let me go. At this moment, Han Wuxiu was fully aware of the situation. Making an enemy of Li Zongjio wouldn't end well. Li Zongjio wasn't a human. He was a demon. No one knew how much power this demon had. Just the strength it had displayed now was enough to crush him. In Han Wuxiu's eyes, it was as if he had fallen into an abyss of despair. Have a taste of being eaten alive by a wild beast, Li Zongjio said with a faint smile. Then Li Zongjio smashed Han Wuxiu's dantian and broke his 4 limbs. Don't leave me here. Han Wuxiu shouted. The smell of fresh blood filled the air. As long as one was in the forest, there would definitely be meta-beasts or wild beasts. There was no doubt about that. Normally, they couldn't be seen because they were hiding. Wild beasts weren't stupid. They wouldn't rush out at the slightest movement and be killed. Only when the surroundings returned to normal would they sneak out. Only then would he quietly poke his head out. Let's go. Li Zongjio waved his hand. There was no need to clean up the scene. He immediately left with Han Wuxiu and the wolf. When the Bloodstrike guards appeared, Li Zongjio knew that something was wrong. There had to be someone colluding with them to achieve such a level of success. Moreover, Han Wuxiu was very confident. He even dared to spy on him from afar. This was too much and too arrogant. Therefore, Li Zongjio didn't hesitate. He immediately summoned the Howling Moon Wolf King in the city. It didn't matter whether the Shadow Fox came or not. After all, the Howling Moon Wolf King alone was enough. The smell of blood in the heavenly Horn Mountain soared into the sky. It almost spread to a radius of 10 miles. If a meta-beast had a sensitive nose, it would be able to smell it clearly from a dozen miles away. Then it would rush over. Han Wuxiu, who was lying on the ground, regained some of his strength. But now, his 4 limbs were all broken. However, as the commander of the Special Envoy Department, he naturally had a way to survive. He still had a chance to survive in such a desperate situation. The pain from his limbs made Han Wuxiu break out in cold sweat. He could even feel the wild beasts staring at his body, ready to eat him. Suddenly, Han Wuxiu saw something on the ground. It was the signal flare that they used to call for help. As long as he bit the thing at the tail, he would be able to release the signal. Therefore, Han Wuxiu finally managed to twist his body to the front of the signal flare with all his might. The signal flare seemed to have been placed there on purpose. In Han Wuxiu's opinion, the heavens wanted him to survive. When Han Wuxiu bit down on the signal flare, he realized that it was empty. How could this be? Han Wuxiu was heartbroken. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. Finally, a sharp-toothed rat could not resist the temptation of the flesh and blood in front of it. It immediately rushed out and bit Han Wuxiu's stomach. Crunch! Fresh blood mixed with the internal organs gushed out. Han Wuxiu's face finally revealed a look of despair. That's right. The signal flare, which was useless at this moment, had been thrown there on purpose by Li Zongjio. When you were filled with hope, you suddenly realized that it was just an abnormal despair. At this moment, your heart would be in so much pain. Chapter 5:32. At this moment, the sacred flame royal city was in an uproar. First of all, in the Supreme Tower. Lung Ao Tian and Prince Xianming had been waiting in the Supreme Tower for half an hour. Prince Xianming had wanted to arrive a little later to show his strength, but he felt that it would be too stingy. Hence, he decided to show up on time. Li Zongjio would definitely be touched if he knew about it. It was such a great honor. Being able to meet a prince was the most glorious thing for a commoner like him. However, it was obvious that Li Zongjio did not take Prince Xianming seriously at all. It was only after half an hour that Prince Xianming confirmed that Li Zongjio had actually dared to reject him. Not only that, but Prince Xianming also found out that his other brothers had also sent invitations to Li Zongjio, but they had all been ignored. Ignoring a prince was akin to courting death. However, ignoring so many princes made him a hero in many people's eyes. However, this news could not be made known to too many people. If the whole city knew about it, wouldn't it make these princes lose all face? Li Zongjio, what a great guy. I'd like to see how long you can jump around. Prince Xianming had never expected that Li Zongjio would actually dare to ignore him. This was simply a great humiliation. However, the more this was the case, the more Prince Xianming thought highly of Li Zongjio. Of course, he did not want to recruit Li Zongjio. Instead, he wanted to confront Li Zongjio head-on and completely trample on Li Zongjio. When Li Zongjio was trampled on, they would be very happy. Very happy. Incomparably excited. Prince Xianming's character was like this. No one could be more powerful than him. Everyone had to submit to him. Lung Ao Tian was naturally punished as well. It would probably be difficult for him to regain his previous trust in a short period of time. This was because Lung Ao Tian had not settled the matter properly and had instead humiliated his master. Lung Ao Tian was already considered merciful for not killing Lung Ao Tian right away. It was impossible to imagine how arrogant and despotic these powerful people would be just by thinking about it with one's brain. Lung Ao Tian was now considered to be in the cold palace, but there were still so many people that he had to rescue. If he used his family's power, there was no way he could gather so much money. That was a total of 1 billion purple yuan. If he could get it so easily, he wouldn't have to work so hard to cultivate. If he had so much money, he would have used it to buy medicinal pills to improve his strength. If there's really no other way, I can only ask for peace. Lung Outyen could not allow so many of his brothers to be trapped in the dungeon and be tortured. Therefore, he had to think of a way to rescue them as soon as possible. Since Tianshui and Li Zongjio are from the same hometown, they should at least give each other some face. It seems like I have to find Tianshui and ask her to negotiate with Li Zongjio. There shouldn't be any problems. Although it was very shameful to ask for help from a woman, he had already asked Yi Tianshui once. If he did it again, it would not be a big problem. Now that Li Zongjio had provoked so many princes at once, he would probably have a hard time in the future. Therefore, he thought that it would be faster. At the very least, he had to rescue those people first. Bo Yu Casino. Although the students of the Blazing Sword Union were under house arrest, the people of Bo Yu Casino would not make things too difficult for them as long as they admitted defeat. Moreover, this was mainly aimed at those who were more arrogant. The harder one's mouth was, the more arrogant one would be, and the more one would suffer. In the end, one would become more and more afraid of being arrogant. One would understand that there was nothing one could do here. Gradually, these people learned to be more obedient. Then, Bo Yu Casino gave these people a good meal. In a dungeon, 2 bowls of rice were placed on the ground. When Wan Zhong saw it, he immediately took the 2 bowls of rice in his hands. At this time, the other prisoner was in a semi-conscious state. When he saw the bowl of rice in Wan Zhong's hands, he immediately became alert. However, he did not have any extra strength. He could only shout softly in Wan Zhong's direction, hoping that Wan Zhong would quickly send the rice to him. When Wan Zhong saw the bowl of rice in his hands, he smiled. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. He walked to the corner, holding the 2 bowls of rice in his hands. Then, he quietly looked at his companion, who was struggling to crawl to him. However, in the end, he directly fainted. "Don't worry, Chao Lin. When I get out, I will avenge you." Wan Zhong's eyes flashed with cold light. Chao Lin's eyes began to lose focus. He just wanted to eat a mouthful of sweet food to replenish his energy and eliminate his pain. However, he did not expect that Wan Zhong would be so cruel. He held the bowl of rice in his hands, but did not give him a mouthful. Chao Lin finally fainted on the ground. Wan Zhong's eyes flickered slightly. Chao Lin, you will not die in vain. Now that a student of Chao Wu Pavilion died in the territory of Boyu Casino, let's see how many heads Boyu Casino has to chop off. Chao Wu Pavilion was the key martial arts academy supported by the Xingyan dynasty. Every year, a large number of elites were trained and would enter the important institutions of the dynasty. Therefore, the Xingyan dynasty attached great importance to Chao Wu Pavilion. Today, if they knew that a young student of Chao Wu Pavilion was poisoned by the evil forces of Jianghu, they would be punished. In addition to the crime of imprisoning them, Li Zongjio would basically be waiting for his whole family to be executed. Now, there was only Wan Zhong and Chao Lin in the cell. There was no one else. After getting out, of course, he could say whatever he wanted. He helped Chao Lin up, and at the same time, put the bowl of rice in front of him, pretending that Chao Lin had already received the rice, but did not have time to eat it, and finally died of illness. Wan Zhong himself pretended to sleep. When he woke up, he found out about this. Everything was ready. He was just waiting for the right time. It would be best if it was not Wan Zhong who found out, but the people of Boyu Casino who found out that someone had died in the dungeon. At that time, they would be begging for forgiveness. Chapter 5:33. Thousand Flavors Herb Hall. Huang He felt restless. He did not know what the final outcome would be. He did not know what had happened on the Sky Horn Mountain. However, he could not just rush out like that. Not to mention Li Zongjio, if Han Wuxiu saw him, he would be doomed. He would definitely fall into Han Wuxiu's hands. Although he had helped Han Wuxiu this time, if he was caught, he would definitely be threatened by Han Wuxiu. Huang He also had a trick up his sleeve. The box he sent to Li Zongjio did not contain the demon camel flower. In this way, when Li Zongjio was caught, Han Wuxiu would not be able to find the demon camel flower from Li Zongjio. In the end, Han Wuxiu would not be able to find the demon camel flower. Once Li Zongjio was dead, he would get rid of the demon camel flower. There would be no trace left. Even if Han Wuxiu came to find him again, there would be nothing to be afraid of. Could it be that he was afraid of you? Whatever he did, he had to pay attention to evidence. If there was no evidence, it would not be so easy to wrongly accuse the chief of Thousand Flavors Herb Hall. In the worst-case scenario, Li Zongjio would still be alive, and Han Wuxiu and the others would all be dead. Under such circumstances, Li Zongjio would definitely hold a grudge against him. At that time, he would only need to hand over the demon camel flower and he would most likely be able to keep his life. In this way, Huang He would also be able to increase his chances of survival to the maximum. Otherwise, he would die no matter what. Twig the tightly shut door was suddenly pushed open, causing Huang He, who was in a daze, to be startled awake. "Who is it?" "Boss, it's me." A skinny young man walked in. Although he was skinny, his running skills were top-notch. "Blackie, how is it? What's the situation on the Sky Horn Mountain?" Huang He was naturally worried, so he sent Blackie to investigate, hoping that he could be mentally prepared as soon as possible. Blackie was also very impressive. In the blink of an eye, he had returned. "Boss, my God, that place is too scary. I estimate that at least 50 or 60 people died there. I also saw the body of Commander Han Wuxiu." After Blackie came in, he finally managed to restrain the shock on his face. When he saw the terrifying scene on the mountain, he was scared out of his wits. He couldn't believe it, especially when he saw Han Wuxiu's corpse. "What? Han Wuxiu is dead? How is that possible? Do you have any evidence?" Huang He was shocked when he heard that. No wonder he had a bad premonition tonight. Now it seemed that this premonition was about to come true. "Hey, when I got there, most of the corpses had already been eaten. I found this." As he spoke, Blackie took out a waste token in his hand. It was picked up beside the corpse. When Huang He saw the waste token, he was certain that the dead person was Han Wuxiu. This waist token was Han Wuxiu's identity token. It was something that he would never leave his body. As an official, he had to wear it at all times. Even when he was taking a bath, he had to wear it around his neck. Now that this waist token was here, it meant that Han Wuxiu was dead. Oh no, how could he be dead? What should we do now? We're in big trouble. A trace of fear appeared in Huang He's eyes. Previously, he thought that even if Li Zongjie was not dead, he would have fled in a hurry. He might not even return to the Sacred Flame Royal City. But now, Han Wuxiu was dead. Not only that, it seemed that the people that Han Wuxiu brought were all dead. So many envoys died in one night. The people in the Special Envoy Department were probably going crazy. And the person who did all this was undoubtedly Li Zongjie. Oh no, I didn't expect Li Zongjie to be such a powerful person. Huang He immediately slapped his thigh. No one would have thought that a mere Li Zongjie would have the ability to command the Special Envoy Department. He was actually able to kill the Special Envoy Department despite being ambushed by so many special envoys. The Special Envoy Department was simply a disgrace. In all the original plans, as long as something happened to Li Zongjie, he would be safe and sound. Even if Li Zongjie was still alive, he would wait for an opportunity to send this hot potato out and take the rest of the money. For Huang He, it would be the best of both worlds. But now, he couldn't believe that everything was reversed. The one who died was Han Wuxiu, and the one who survived was Li Zongjie. Boss, are you okay? Seeing that Chief Huang He seemed a little anxious, Blackie was also a little surprised. This was the first time he saw Chief Huang He reveal such an expression and attitude. It really surprised Blackie. You can go back first. There's nothing for you to do here. Huang He waved his hand and let Blackie leave first. Huang He also rummaged through the boxes and cabinets to pack up his things. Although the possibility of this happening was very small, Huang He had a bad feeling about it. If this continued, it was very likely that he would die here. Even if this was the headquarters of the Thousand Taste Herb Hall. But how could a person who could kill the commander of the Special Envoy Department not come to such a place? Even the headquarters of the Thousand Taste Herb Hall must exist in name to him. I have to leave the Sacred Flame Royal City as soon as possible. His keen intuition over the years was also guiding Huang He to the right path. Without a doubt, Huang He's choice was right. But in terms of time, it was too late. Just as Huang He was packing up his things, he felt the door being pushed open. The candles in the room were instantly extinguished. Whoosh! Whoosh! As darkness appeared, Huang He's body froze in an instant. A faint murderous aura could be felt. Huang He only felt that his breathing was frozen and he couldn't move. How could this be? Chief Huang, are you going on a trip? Li Zongjie's voice sounded from behind Huang He. Huang He's heart suddenly thumped. Sure enough, he came to find him. Huang He knew that Li Zongjie would come, but he didn't expect Li Zongjie to come so quickly. At the very least, there were many experts in the Thousand Taste Herb Hall. But even though Li Zongjie was already standing in front of him, there was still no movement from the outside world. No one noticed that Li Zongjie was approaching. Young Master Li, let me explain. Huang He squeezed out a bitter smile. At this moment, he could only put up a final struggle. If he died without putting up a struggle, it would be too regretful. Chapter 5:34. Where's the thing I want? Li Zongjie didn't come all the way here just to listen to your explanation. Explanations aren't necessary. If he cared about you, he wouldn't need your explanation. As for Li Zongjie, he didn't care about Huang He's life at all. So, no matter how much you explain, it's useless. You're going to die anyway. I didn't want to do this. If young Master Li doesn't let me go, I won't hand over the thing. Han Wuxiu forced me to do this. Huang He said resolutely. At this moment, he had to make things clear. If he couldn't, he would make Li Zongjie suffer even if he had to die. How could anyone sacrifice themselves for the sake of others? If Li Zongjie insisted on killing him, he wouldn't let Li Zongjie off either. Fine, hand over the thing and I'll spare your life. Li Zongjie said indifferently. Huang He almost couldn't believe his ears when he heard that. What? You're telling the truth? Huang He was shocked. Could it be that Li Zongjio was such a kind person? Impossible. Thinking about the fate of Han Wuxiu and the others, how could Li Zongjio be a kind person? Everyone was killed. Li Zongjio's method was so cruel and vicious. He was definitely not a kind person. Of course, I killed so many people for the sake of obtaining the demonic abbot flower. I didn't kill people for the sake of killing people. If you were to give me the demonic abbot flower, there would be no need for me to kill so many people. Li Zongjio said very naturally. What he said sounded very reasonable. Huang He's thoughts were also colliding rapidly. Maybe Li Zongjio was forced to do this because he had no other choice? Thinking about it, it did make sense. Maybe. As long as Li Zongjio handed over the thing, this matter would be over. If that was the case, then this matter could be considered to have come to a perfect end. With such an opportunity, this matter would definitely be resolved. For a moment, he actually believed Li Zongjio. After thinking about it again and again, he was afraid that there might be some changes. Since Li Zongjio was willing to give it a try, it wouldn't be a problem. Then, he took out the thing that he kept with him. The box in his hand felt heavy. When Li Zongjio took out the box, he could feel the hidden power inside. It must be the demon camel flower. The demon camel flower is in this box. However, one must wear this special glove in order to be able to pick it up. Although the demonic abbot flower has been severed and its power is not as strong as before, if one carelessly touches it, one's soul will still be damaged. Huang He explained. Li Zongjio naturally knew about the demon camel flower's ability to devour souls. In fact, there was a terrifying power in the demon camel flower. This power could destroy one's soul defense and directly seize one's soul power. If you know how to resist this power, then it will be useless against you. Therefore, the way to destroy the demon camel flower back then was to gather a group of powerful spiritual masters to destroy the demon camel flowers. This was the most correct way. Li Zongjio opened the box and reached out to take the demon camel flower in his hand. On the surface, it looked like a withered Ganoderma. In addition, its color was extremely dark. At a glance, it gave off a profound feeling. Immediately, one could tell that it was not an ordinary thing. However, Li Zongjio's expression did not change much. When he saw the demon camel flower, he remained calm. Seeing Li Zongjio directly grab the demon camel flower, Huang He was so frightened that he hurriedly shouted, "Be careful!" However, nothing unexpected happened to Li Zongjio. He just held the demon camel flower in his hand and looked at Huang He. "This flower of yours is fake," Li Zongjio said indifferently. "Fake? How is that possible?" After hearing this, Huang He's face was filled with disbelief. He didn't believe that the demonic snail flower in his hand was fake. He had personally appraised this flower, so it couldn't be fake. After all, this flower was very valuable. Such an item couldn't be easily fooled. How is it not possible? If you want to prove that it is real, then you have to touch it. Li Zongjio placed the demon camel flower on the table. You have to pick it up and prove that it is real. Hearing Li Zongjio's words, Huang He finally understood. Li Zongjio meant that he had to use his life to prove that the demon camel flower was real. Wasn't that the same as asking him to die? You want me to die? Huang He understood what Li Zongjio meant. He stared at Li Zongjio in disbelief. He had originally thought that they had come to an agreement. He had never imagined that Li Zongjio would still want him to die there. Everyone had a temper. If Li Zongjio wanted him to die, did that mean he had to die? I didn't say that. As long as you can prove that this is the demon camel flower I want, I will leave immediately. If you can't prove it, then I won't leave. I might even kill you. Li Zongjio smiled faintly. There was a mocking look in his eyes. Li Zongjio did not care about what Huang He had encountered in the past. That was why he had made this choice. First of all, Huang He had set up a trap when he had given him the item. If Luo Yunyang had not been strong enough, he would have been killed by the blood strike guards. Secondly, the item in the box was actually a fake. No matter how good Li Zongjio's temper was, he wouldn't be able to continue tolerating this. Since Huang He liked to play with schemes, tricks, and intelligence, Then he would have to put on a good show in front of Li Zongjio. Don't force me. If worst comes to worst, we will fight to the death. Huang He pointed at Li Zongjio and bellowed. Huang He had been forced to make this choice. If he had to compare his own life with Li Zongjio's, then his own life would have been more precious. Every year, countless people would die helplessly, all because of some trivial matters. Even some very promising young people would not have a good ending when they encountered such things. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before this person would be crippled and disappear from Monarch City. In front of Huang He, Li Zongjio was just an unlucky young man. Therefore, he didn't care about Li Zongjio's life or death. He would only be safe if Li Zongjio died. I'm forcing you, Li Zongjio said. Then, he grabbed the demon camel flower in his hand and appeared in front of Huang He in a flash. Huang He turned pale with fright when he saw this. However, it was too late. Li Zongjio used the demon camel flower in his hand like a dagger and stabbed it into Huang He's neck. In an instant, Huang He felt as if his body and soul were rapidly shrinking at this moment. His body's functions were constricted. Then, he felt his spiritual power pouring into the demonic camel flower. His eyes were filled with fear, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. Finally, with a swoosh, he was devoured by the demon camel flower in his hand. His eyeballs lost their color. Then, Huang He's body fell to the ground with a plop. Although the wound on his neck was fatal, his soul was empty. However, a body without a soul was nothing more than an empty shell. Not many people would be able to detect such a situation during an autopsy. What a pity! If you had reported Han Wuxiu to me from the beginning, I wouldn't have minded sending you to a meteoric rise. However, you can only go to heaven now. Li Zongjio walked out of Huang He's office and gently closed the door. It was as if no one had been there. Chapter 5:35. After obtaining the demon camel flower, Li Zongjio immediately chose to enter the 5 Elements Yuan building to refine the elixir. However, the situation of the 5 Elements Yuan Tower seemed to be a little special today. Li Zongjio sat by the side and waited. The number of rooms that were opened was relatively small. Therefore, Li Zongjio decided to wait for a while. After all, the royal blood demon camel pill was not easy to refine. Refining a high-grade elixir was a little stressful for Li Zongjio. After all, Li Zongjio's current strength was equivalent to the peak of the origin ancestor realm. As for level 5 high-grade medicinal pills, they could only be concocted by Pill King realm experts. For example, the South Heaven Elixir King used a high-grade elixir to stand out in a competition between alchemists. He established his current status as an Elixir King. It was not that there were 5 people in the world who could surpass the South Heaven Elixir King. It was just that the South Heaven Elixir King was more dazzling at that time. Not to mention the underworld, there were at least 2 alchemists in the imperial family who were more skilled than the South Heaven Elixir King. The mysterious master of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor was also more skilled than the South Heaven Elixir King. This level of cultivation was not something that could be touched so easily. It was just that these people couldn't be like some young people and participate in this kind of killing competition. They were already past the age of that. There were also many people waiting with them. Seeing these people's movements, each of them looked full of confidence, and some of them had a worried look on their faces. Li Zongjio closed his eyes and waited for a while. Suddenly, he heard the sound of heavy armor moving outside the Yuan building. There were also rumbling sounds coming from the ground. It seemed like a large army was moving. What's going on outside? It seems like the city guards. Why would the city guards come here? Is there a wanted criminal here? Immediately, these people began to discuss amongst themselves. While they were talking, they had completely surrounded the 5 Elements Yuan house. Seeing this scene, everyone present started to panic. What's going on? They surrounded the 5 Elements Yuan building. Li Zongjio opened his eyes. As the name implied, the city guards were naturally responsible for maintaining the security of the city. Generally, they were best at catching thieves and fugitives. Of course, if there was a large-scale case, the city guards would pay attention to it, and their efficiency would be very high. The people inside, listen up. I am the Vice Battalion Commander of the City Guard's 3rd Battalion, Tusk Battalion, Liu Pei. All of them walked out with their hands on their heads and squatted on the ground. If you don't surrender after 100 breaths, then don't blame me for giving the order to charge in. Even the person in charge of the 5 Elemental Yuan House went forward to negotiate, but he was unable to do anything and was directly detained at the side. When the people in the 5 Elements Yuan Tower saw this scene, they were somewhat flabbergasted. They were somewhat unable to react. How could such a thing happen? Could it be that some of the bad things they had done before had been reported? However, most of them were magnanimous in their hearts. Moreover, they were frightened by the ferocious aura of the city guards. The swords and spears in their hands were all real weapons. Those who came to the 5 Elements Yuan building to cultivate were basically people of the underworld who didn't have a good place to go. If their family had the means, they would choose to specially build a training room in their home and set up some Yuan rune arrays. This effect should not be a problem. However, for those with limited means, they could only choose to come to the 5 Elements Yuan building at such a crucial time to undergo the most crucial process of breaking through. Don't be impulsive. We are out. We are innocent. Many of them raised their hands and walked out. From their point of view, it was obviously not a wise choice to directly clash with the government or even the dynasty's army. Therefore, raising their hands and surrendering could be said to be the wisest choice. We are not going out. These people don't have a search warrant. Could it be that they are looking down on our human rights? We are all people with status. Some of the people who had some status in the city rose up one after another. If their subordinates knew about this, wouldn't they lose face? Therefore, they chose to resist at such a time. Someone even rushed out and confronted the deputy battalion commander named Liu Pei. He wanted to expose his identity and interrogate him. However, he was immediately arrested by Liu Pei and his men and handcuffed on the spot. It didn't matter how high one's status was. It was all to no avail. How dare you? Do you know who I am? How dare you handcuff me? However, that person didn't make a sound because his mouth was directly covered and he couldn't speak at all. All of you, listen up. Today, we are going to capture the wanted criminal who killed the Imperial Martial Pavilion students. He is extremely dangerous. If anyone dares to resist, kill him without mercy. Liu Pei roared. The soldiers immediately stomped the spears and shields in their hands on the ground. Waves of air were released in unison. Boom! Murderous aura surged. After this commotion, the few people in the room, who were originally more stubborn, began to tidy up their clothes one after another. Don't do anything. We are coming out. A few people who were more reputable raised their hands together and walked out as if surrendering. When they walked out, it was difficult to hide the embarrassment on their faces. Take them all. Liu Pei directly ordered. Immediately, the soldiers stepped forward and detained the last few people. After they were placed on the ground, they were directly handcuffed with the chains. Then they were directly put in headgear. After this group of people was taken away, they were all locked up in prison wagons. Liu Pei's eyes revealed a trace of fierceness and decisiveness. He was a person who didn't like trouble. He liked to be straightforward in everything. If someone broke the law, he would directly take them down. If the crime was serious, he would directly execute them on the spot. How could there be such a trivial matter? So what if he killed the wrong person? Since he was killed, he deserved it. Therefore, there was nothing to worry about. Therefore, when Liu Pei did things, he was particular about efficiency. There is still one person inside. Team 1, go and take him out. Sir. Immediately, a team of people rushed into the 5 Elements Yuan house. Li Zongjio, who was meditating, looked at the people at the door at this moment. His eyes flickered with a cold light. However, he didn't start a massacre. His figure quietly blended into the darkness. He disappeared. Chapter 5:36. The group of soldiers rushed in and searched for a long time, but they could not find Li Zongjio's figure. Thus, these people wandered around and were about to go out. With a loud bang, the door was tightly shut. The captain of the first squad was shocked when he saw this. Liu Pei, who was guarding outside, saw this and immediately gave the order. Attack! Stop pretending to be mysterious. I want to see if you really have 3 heads and 6 arms. Liu Pei growled. The soldiers under his command also rushed forward. When most of the people around him had left, only a group of guards was left beside Liu Pei. Suddenly, Liu Pei seemed to see a figure walking towards him, but he could only see it vaguely. Not good. Liu Pei's intuition told him that something bad was about to happen. He immediately drew the sword at his waist, but then he saw another figure on his horse. You're courting death. He slashed his sword at the figure. That person also stretched out his finger and casually clashed with the sword. Clang! Liu Pei's sword broke with a sound. In the next moment, Li Zongjiu's finger pressed against Liu Pei's forehead. He only needed to use a little force and Liu Pei's head would explode. Although Liu Pei was surprised by Li Zongjiu's strength and age, he still felt like a man who did not fear death. He raised his head and pressed it against Li Zongjiu's finger. Good skill. Since I've been defeated, you can kill me or cut me up as you wish. Don't worry, my brothers will avenge me. Until Li Zongjiu's figure appeared. Only then did the guards beside Liu Pei react. Someone had actually taken Deputy Battalion Commander Liu Pei hostage in front of them, and it was done so directly. Who are you? Li Zongjiu asked. Although he did not know what had happened, his intuition told him that these people were here for him. If he did not have this keen insight, Li Zongjiu would not have been able to survive until now. City Guard's Black Fang Battalion. Liu Pei gritted his teeth and said, if Li Zongjiu wanted to insult his banner, then even if he risked losing his head, he would definitely bite off a piece of meat from Li Zongjiu's body. As a soldier, his banner could not be insulted. Who sent you to deal with me? Li Zongjiu continued to ask. He originally thought that Liu Pei was a subordinate of some prince, and wanted to directly send people to capture him, so he casually came up with a groundless accusation. If that was the case, Li Zongjiu would definitely not let these people go. At that moment, the only thing he knew was that Liu Pei seemed to be just following orders. That meant that there was someone else behind Liu Pei. What did you say? I'm following military orders. Liu Pei roared. Li Zongjiu was too lazy to ask. He directly stepped on Liu Pei's body and pressed Liu Pei onto the horse's back. If you dare to chase after me, then wait to collect your deputy battalion commander's corpse. Li Zongjiu roared angrily and immediately urged his horse towards the Broad Delight Casino. Obviously, something had happened in the Broad Delight Casino, because the Martial Tide Pavilion students were imprisoned in the Broad Delight Casino. From the looks of it, one of them was dead. How could a person die so easily? Therefore, Li Zongjiu must know that someone was secretly causing trouble. No matter who it was, as long as they touched Li Zongjiu, he would definitely drag them out. No matter who supported him, it would be useless. Along the way, Li Zongjiu held Liu Pei hostage and rushed to the front of the Broad Delight Casino. The soldiers behind did not dare to chase after them directly, but only followed from a distance. If their commander was killed, then they would definitely be held accountable. At this time, whoever ran in the front would undoubtedly be the first to bear the brunt and be punished. Therefore, they chose to proceed in this way, but they would definitely not lose sight of Liu Pei. Quick, keep up. A large number of city guards were also running wildly in the city. The Sacred Flame Imperial City was bustling with noise and excitement tonight. Some of the higher-ups were also watching with great interest. The 9th Prince Xianming was on a tall building, and beside him were the 2 sisters Bing Shuang and Bing Shuang. From this direction, they could see the Broad Delight Casino. What a pity! Since I can't use you, then I can only sacrifice you. Although it's a pity, who asked you to kill someone? Such a good excuse, how can I let it go so easily? Prince Xianming smiled faintly. In the distance, Li Zongjiu urged his horse to gallop. However, at this moment, the entrance of the Broad Delight Casino was already sealed. The battalion commander of the Tusk Battalion personally led a team to seal the place, and even detained Taifai and the others. Moreover, he also received an order to prepare to execute them on the street. Taifai and the others did not expect that this matter would be blown out of proportion. Moreover, the news seemed to spread like wildfire, and in an instant, it reached the ears of a certain big shot, who then took this opportunity to make things difficult for them. He directly mobilized the people of the Ministry of Justice. After the verification process was completed, he directly arrested them. The whole process only took half an hour, and they did not even have time to report to Li Zongjio. The other party clearly wanted to cut the Gordian knot with a swift knife. "Ha, you lowly things dare to arrest me? If I don't make your heads fall to the ground, I'm not called Wan Zhong." Wan Zhong's eyes flashed with a cold light. At this moment, they were also in the protected area. Even if they were rescued, they would not have to pay a single cent. Now, not only the Broad Delight Casino, Li Zongjio, who was behind the scenes, would be arrested soon. He would be executed on the spot. In the Sacred Flame Royal City, was there anyone who could go against the royal authority? Therefore, Wan Zhong already had victory in his grasp at this moment. He even had the feeling that he could play everyone in front of him in the palm of his hand. Within the cordon set up by the soldiers, there was a stretcher on the ground covered with a white cloth. The one who died was Chao Lin. The death of his companion made the people of the Blazing Sword Alliance even more furious. These people in front of them were so vicious. They definitely wanted to close down the Broad Delight Casino and seal it up completely. Among the crowd, Jean Buffon's resentment towards the Broad Delight Casino was particularly deep. Originally, as a Heaven's Pride, he would have a bright future ahead of him. It was fine for him to be proud and arrogant. However, he was humiliated by Li Zongjio time and time again. As a future star, how could he endure such humiliation? He must turn these people into ashes one by one in order to eliminate the hatred in his heart. Chao Lin's death can eliminate the hatred in my heart. Chao Lin, I still have to thank you. Tai Fai and the others were detained and forced to kneel on the ground. In front of the army and the government, they had no power to resist and no right to speak, unless they were strong enough to be the enemy of the Xingyan dynasty. Heavy shackles trapped them on the ground. Tai Fai's eyes were gloomy. He could not help but sigh in his heart. This situation was really unbearable for him. A second ago, he was high and mighty, but in the next second, he was reduced to a prisoner on death row. There was no way to reverse the situation. "You bastards, my child is only 17 years old. How could you do this? How could you be so vicious?" Mr. and Mrs. Chow were also sobbing on the side. They wished they could faint on the ground. The couple came from the outer city and worked hard all the way until now. They could be considered to have a small family business. Now that their son was also successful, they felt gratified and happy. But who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, they would have to send their son away? In their agitation, they even rushed up and grabbed Tai Fai, wanting to punch and kick him. They knelt in front of Chao Lin, who was covered by a white cloth, crying and shouting. They could not believe what had happened. Inhumane, lawless. Come, immediately behead these people. The commander of the Tusk Battalion, Wang Ding, ordered. Just as he was about to give the order to behead, he saw an object flying towards him from the sky. Chapter 537. A figure suddenly flew down from the sky. Seeing this thing rushing over, the people around Wang Ding immediately became alert. "Shoot that thing down." Wang Ding's guards immediately roared. However, those with sharp eyes immediately saw that the thing flying towards them was none other than their deputy battalion commander, Liu Pei. "Don't shoot, it's the deputy battalion commander. It's the deputy battalion commander." The guard captain hurriedly roared. However, it was too late for someone to retract his arrow. Fortunately, when the arrow was released, it was shot directly to the side. Bang! "Oh my God, who the hell shot my butt?" Liu Pei howled in pain in midair. As he fell, he was caught by the soldiers. However, after Liu Pei landed on the ground, he reacted and immediately shouted at Wang Ding. "Battalion commander, be careful." As his voice faded, Battalion Commander Wang Ding felt a chill on his back. It was as if something cold and bone-piercing was placed on his neck. Wang Ding immediately knew that someone was holding him hostage. Immediately, he gave a disdainful smile. This place was right under the emperor's nose. Could it be that someone had the guts to hold him, the battalion commander of the city guards, hostage in Royal City? Given the nature of the situation, it was tantamount to a rebellion. Rebellion. 9 generations of the clan would be implicated. Kid, you're really bold. You actually dare to rebel in front of everyone. Wang Ding coldly shouted. Li Zongjio, who was behind him, was unmoved. He looked at the situation around him, then looked at Tai-Fai, who was kneeling on the ground. Finally, his gaze fell on the white cloth on the stretcher. He frowned slightly as he smelled something unusual. Sir, without distinguishing between right and wrong, you sealed up my casino and even wanted to behead my men. Who gave you the right to deceive everyone and cover the sky with one hand? Li Zongjio used the knife in his hand to knock the helmet on Wang Ding's head and said indifferently, "This helmet was an item on the head and could not be touched." At this moment, Li Zongjio actually knocked it in front of his subordinates. He was really too arrogant. "How dare you!" Wang Ding suddenly shouted angrily and turned around on his horse. He wanted to confront Li Zongjio face to face. He had to do it in front of Li Zongjio, or at least use his eyes to deter Li Zongjio. As an army, it was very shameful to be held hostage like this. But just as Wang Ding turned around, he saw Li Zongjio's foot coming towards him. Bang! Wang Ding's figure fell from the horse's back. In the next second, Li Zongjio landed in front of Wang Ding. The long blade in his hand was pressed against Wang Ding's neck. This kick was not a light one. "Take it." Li Zongjio threw out the Imperial Alchemist token. Wang Ding caught it with both hands and recognized the token. The symbol on it was equivalent to Li Zongjio's rank as a standard 4th-grade alchemist in the Imperial Court. Just the rank of primary rank 4 was already above Wang Ding's. However, Li Zongjio's position did not have real power, but his status was there. If there was something that offended him, it would be quite serious. If he really wanted to fuss over it, the punishment would also be quite severe. Wang Ding was the battalion commander of the City Guard's Black Fang Battalion. His rank was equivalent to a deputy 5th rank. There was a full 3 ranks between him and Li Zongjio. If he was punished, it would be over. Suddenly, Wang Ding seemed to realize that something was wrong. Generally speaking, such a high-ranking official would have someone to take care of him. If something happened, it would be arranged. Today's matter came suddenly. He suddenly received an order. However, he did not know who gave the order, so he directly brought people over. Wang Ding, who had sharp intuition, roughly knew that this should be a cleansing operation to kill with a borrowed knife. The purpose was to get rid of the other party. Therefore, once the evidence was conclusive, there was no need to ask for the reason. When he saw Li Zongjio's identity token, he was immediately dumbfounded. How did things turn out like this? You tell me what's going on. Li Zongjio flicked his finger. A wave of energy directly broke the shackles on Tai-Fai's body. With a clang, Tai-Fai regained his freedom. At first, Tai-Fai also thought that his head would fall to the ground. However, he never expected that Li Zongjio would arrive at such a crucial moment and directly take down the other party's general. How domineering! Young master, this afternoon, we discovered that someone had fainted in the dungeon. We invited a doctor to examine him and found that he was already dead. The doctor's diagnosis was that his illness had acted up, but the appraisers they invited all agreed that he had been beaten to death. Tai-Fai stood up and said, "At this moment, a life was really involved. The person was in the territory of the Broadjoy Casino, so no one could escape. Even now, the Imperial Martial Pavilion had not been alerted. If the people of the Imperial Martial Pavilion came, it would not be so simple. Perhaps the outcome would be even more brutal. Although the Imperial Martial Pavilion did not have law enforcement authority, if the experts of the Imperial Martial Pavilion rushed into the Broadjoy Casino and killed everyone. In the end, who would Emperor Xingyan stand on? There was no doubt about it. His illness flared up, but he wants to kill everyone in the Broadjoy Casino? Li Zongjio's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of cold light. He squatted in front of Wang Ding. Dozens of lives, you have the final say? Hearing Li Zongjio's words, Wang Ding's heart could not help but exclaim. At this moment, when he saw Li Zongjio and the token in his hand, Wang Ding had a bad premonition in his heart. Could it be that someone wanted to borrow Li Zongjio's knife to kill him, Wang Ding? Just based on Li Zongjio's identity, Wang Ding would definitely not be able to touch him. If by any chance that the knife fell down just now, Li Zongjio would definitely remember Wang Ding. Then, the matter would naturally be simple. If Li Zongjio did not kill Wang Ding, then Wang Ding would really be lucky. Lift the white cloth, Li Zongjio said. Among the crowd, after seeing Li Zongjio appear, Wang Zhong seemed to have taken control of the situation. He was actually able to seize the initiative under the heavy guard of so many people. This was a doomed situation. Could it be that Li Zongjio wanted to fight a comeback? No matter what, they could not follow Li Zongjio's rhythm. Uncle, auntie, he is the culprit. Brother Chao was killed by him. Wang Zhong stood out and shouted, pointing at Li Zongjio. When the Chao couple, who were about to faint from crying, heard that their son's enemy had appeared, they forcibly stood up from the brink of fainting. Their eyes released a ferocious glint as they stared at Li Zongjio. You murderer! Mother Chao screamed and rushed towards Li Zongjio. However, before Mother Chao could get close to Li Zongjio, she was stopped by the soldiers Wang Ding signaled. First of all, Li Zongjio had been a dangerous person for a long time. Moreover, now that Li Zongjio's identity was here, it would not be easy to directly execute Li Zongjio and convict him of the crime. Therefore, it was better to see the changes in front of him first. Fortunately, the knife did not cut down. Otherwise, he would be finished. Li Zongjio glanced at the grief-stricken Mother Chao. Her hair was messy, revealing a trace of paleness. Obviously, she had suffered a great blow. However, relatively speaking, Li Zongjio was more interested in the person who had just spoken. When Li Zongjio turned around and stared at Wang Zhong felt a chill run down his spine. Although Wang Zhong was a little scared, he did not think that Li Zongjio would dare make a move in front of so many people. If that was the case, the Imperial Martial Pavilion would definitely step in and arrest Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio, you have already killed a student of the Imperial Martial Pavilion. Do you want to keep all of us here? I think you want to make an enemy out of the Imperial Martial Pavilion. Jean Buffon was not afraid of Li Zongjio. They even wished they could skin Li Zongjio alive and pull out his tendons. At this moment, they stepped forward bravely and stood together with Wang Zhong. Chapter 5:38. Both of them wanted to kill Li Zongjio. Only then would they be able to wash away the humiliation they had to bear. Li Zongjio glanced at Wang Zhong and knew that there was something wrong with him. Immediately, his figure flashed and he dashed toward Wang Zhong. You're courting death. Are you trying to kill someone in broad daylight? Jean Buffon immediately gave a loud shout and immediately circulated his essence force and charged towards Li Zongjio. However, Li Zongjio did not even look at Jean Buffon as he sent out a palm strike. The shockwave that was transmitted through the air instantly sent Jean Buffon flying. Bang! From within the crowd, Jean Buffon's figure shot out explosively, directly smashing through several walls before finally coming to a stop. His body was already riddled with old injuries. In addition to the fact that he had been imprisoned for the past few days, he simply did not have enough food or warm clothes. His physical strength had not recovered yet. It was normal for him to be sent flying in an instant. You are so arrogant. How dare you defy the law? Wang Zhong immediately shouted. Clearly, he was extremely shocked. He had never expected that Li Zongjio would actually dare to attack. In the next moment, Wang Zhong finally experienced Li Zongjio's power. He was directly grabbed by Li Zongjio's hand and violently flung to the back. Bang! Wang Zhong's body fell to the ground with his face down. Coincidentally, he fell in front of the white cloth. You're the one who killed him, right? Li Zongjio pointed at the corpse and said indifferently. When Wang Zhong heard this, he was shocked. He did not expect that Li Zongjio would be able to guess it. However, his face was filled with mockery as he looked at Li Zongjio and sneered. Li Zongjio, do you think you can get away with this? Chao Lin and I are not blood brothers, but we are closer than blood brothers. How could I kill him? If it wasn't for your inhumane beatings, my brother would not have died in that dark dungeon. Not only did you illegally detain him, but you also abused your authority. Today I will kill you here. If the city guards do not dare to touch you, my Imperial Martial Pavilion will not let you off. Wang Zhong roared at Li Zongjio. Slap. Li Zongjio slapped Wang Zhong's face, causing him to spurt out a mouthful of blood. You sure talk a lot of crap. What I'm asking is, did you kill this person? Li Zongjio continued to ask. In Wang Zhong's eyes, Li Zongjio's cold eyes seemed to have seen through everything. How could Li Zongjio know? No, he definitely doesn't know. He must be trying to trick me. Wang Zhong thought in his heart. He even temporarily forgot about the revenge of being slapped in the face. If people knew that he was the one who killed Chao Lin, he would end up in a miserable state. Not only would the Chao family not let him off, but his own family would not let him off either. The Imperial Martial Pavilion and the city's judicial system would not let Wang Zhong off. Such a vile act would definitely result in him being killed. At that time, Wang Zhong was destined to be the target of everyone's criticism. Chao Lin was already dead anyway. Dead men tell no tales. There was more than one person in the world who knew about this, and that was Wang Zhong. As long as Wang Zhong did not say anything, what could Li Zongjio do? If you want to condemn someone, you can always accuse them. You can also twist the truth. Li Zongjio, don't be too arrogant. You will get your retribution sooner or later. Slap. Li Zongjio gave Wang Zhong another slap. Wang Zhong's mouth was bleeding. Battalion commander, this, Wang Ding and Lu Pei stood to the side, watching the farce unfold before their eyes. At this moment, Wang Ding also came to a realization. With Li Zongjio's strength and the token in his hand, it was impossible to kill Li Zongjio with a mere matter of this level. Therefore, their goal of coming here was to force Li Zongjio to take action. Either that or someone deliberately wanted to test Li Zongjio's ability. Either that or someone wanted to use Li Zongjio's saber to kill him. Now that Wang Ding had seen through the second scenario, he was not in a hurry. He would wait and see. Let's wait and see what tricks they can play. This Li Zongjio is not someone we can touch. As he spoke, Wang Ding handed the identity token in his hand to Lu Pei. Although Lu Pei's but was hit by an arrow, it was almost healed. There was still a trace of blood on his hand as he took the token. This is a rank 4 badge, this. It was no wonder that Li Zongjio did not have any scruples along the way. With such an identity here, what was there to be afraid of? He could kill people in minutes. With Li Zongjio's status, even if Li Zongjio killed Lu Pei on the spot, nothing would happen. After all, Lu Pei had ordered the arrest of a 4th-rank official of the Imperial Court without investigating the matter clearly. This was truly an act of insubordination. Moreover, there was no absolute evidence here. The procedure of the trial officials was more complicated. Usually, they would be sent to one of the 3 judicial halls to be judged one by one. During the process, if one could make connections one by one, then even if one was guilty, he would be acquitted in the end. The former head of the judicial hall was Yi Lantian, who was killed by Li Zongjio. It could be seen how brave Li Zongjio was at that time. He actually dared to kill the head of the judicial hall. Think about it, Li Zongjio could even do such a thing. Why would he be afraid of the Cook's army unit? It's fine if you don't want to say it. Since you don't want to say it, I'll let him say it. Li Zongjio threw Wang Zhong to the side. Although the students of the Imperial Martial Pavilion were angry, they did not step forward. After this incident, they learned a principle, which was not to stand out. Li Zongjio had no problem beating people up in broad daylight. If they rushed forward, they would only be beaten up. However, the person Li Zongjio was pointing at was Chao Lin and not anyone else. Wang Zhong was stunned when he saw this. Then, he laughed out loud with his mouth full of blood. Ha, Li Zongjio, are you stupid because of your guilty conscience? Chao Lin is already dead. Do you still have the ability to make a dead person speak? No matter what, you won't be able to escape death today. Wang Zhong said coldly. If he didn't kill Li Zongjio, he wouldn't be able to survive in the Xingyan dynasty anymore. Ordinary people naturally wouldn't dare to touch the students of the Imperial Martial Pavilion. However, Li Zongjio was different. He was a student of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. His status was not inferior to Wang Zhong's. Wait a moment. You can laugh. Tai Fai, find a table and lift this person up. Tai-Fai, who was standing at the side, didn't know what to do. After hearing Wan Zhong's order, he immediately rushed into the casino and carried a gambling table out. With a bang, he placed the gambling table on the ground. At the same time, he helped Li Zongjio to place the person on the stretcher on the table. When the white cloth was pulled off, what was revealed was a deathly pale face. Chapter 539. Once again, they saw their deceased child. The grief-stricken Chow couple immediately let out an anguished wail. They nearly fainted from crying. When Lu Pei saw this scene, he wanted to step forward to stop it. Wasn't Li Zongjio intentionally destroying the corpse? If something was found on the corpse, wouldn't it be terrible? If the corpse was destroyed, it would definitely make their work more difficult. Therefore, when Li Zongjio did such a thing, Lu Pei was extremely worried. Let him go. Don't forget he is this. On the other hand, Wang Ding's eyes were like torches. With a glance, he could tell that Li Zongjio was not a simple person. Since the other party did this, then there must be a reason. If he did not have any real ability, then how could he be worthy of the Imperial Alchemist's qualification? Lu Pei also saw the Imperial Alchemist token in Wang Ding's hand and immediately nodded his head in his heart. That was indeed the case. Li Zongjio took out a set of silver needles and shot them back and forth on Chao Lin's body. Soon, Chao Lin's body was covered with silver needles. He pierced the silver needles bit by bit. Some of the silver needles were thick, while others were thin. When Li Zongjio slowly pierced the long silver needle in his hand into Chao Lin's eyelids, it seemed to have directly pierced through Chao Lin's eyeballs. When everyone saw this scene, they instantly felt their scalps go numb. If Chao Lin was still alive, how painful would that be? They didn't expect Li Zongjio to be so cruel. Even when Chao Lin was in such a state, he still wasn't willing to let Chao Lin go. Li Zongjio, Chao Lin is already dead. You actually want to let Chao Lin die with grievances? You really don't put my Imperial Martial Pavilion in your eyes. Today, if my Imperial Martial Pavilion members were to be manipulated by you, Li Zongjio, how could we face our teacher in the future? As long as you are from the Martial Tide Pavilion, stand out and defend the dignity of the Martial Tide Pavilion's disciples. Wan Zhong suddenly shouted, although he did not know what Li Zongjio was doing now. However, if Li Zongjio was allowed to continue, there would inevitably be some changes. Although he clearly knew that this was impossible, if Chao Lin was really allowed to come back to life, or even have a terminal lucidity, it would be a great threat to Wan Zhong. At the same time, Li Zongjio's actions had definitely crossed the bottom line of these people. Clearly, Li Zongjio had not considered the importance of the dead. Just this alone was enough to touch the bottom line of an ordinary person. As expected, those people from the Imperial Martial Pavilion could no longer stand still. Li Zongjio, stop. Quickly stop. Otherwise, my Martial Dawn Pavilion will definitely not rest until you die. Let go of Chao Lin's body. If you have any problems, just come at me. Brothers, let's fight it out with him. When Tai-Fai saw that the people from the Martial Dawn Pavilion seemed to be acting strangely, he instantly stepped forward. He blocked in front of Li Zongjio. Boom! The aura within his body was released. Moreover, this aura also contained an extremely terrifying murderous aura. This murderous aura also gradually boiled. Such a strong murderous aura instantly suppressed the group of brats in front of him. At the end of the day, these people were just a group of embryos that had yet to undergo baptism. If they wanted to become a true warrior or assassin, they had to accumulate enough blood in their hands in order to succeed. All of you shut up. There is definitely something fishy about this. That kid's death was definitely caused by someone else. If anyone dares to interfere, that person will be the mastermind. Tai-Fai said in a deep voice. His pair of eyes were like a creeping leopard. His original identity as a prisoner seemed to have entered a state where he was automatically released. Wang Ding and the others by the side were also quietly observing the changes. Wang Ding was not in a hurry. He wanted to see what exactly was going on. After all, the current situation was still under his control. Tai-Fai's words also caused the restlessness in the hearts of the crowd to stop. Each of them had already witnessed the strength of the Martial Dawn Pavilion in the Broad Delight Casino. Therefore, they did not dare to be too arrogant now. Facing Tai-Fi, they were more or less a little terrified. What happened here? Li Zongjio was currently executing the needle technique. He continuously swung the silver needle in his hand back and forth on Chao Lin's body. After inserting the needle, he pulled it out again. Although the layman did not understand what Li Zongjio was doing, the scene was still very lively. However, this technique was a little dazzling, and it made one feel incomparably absent-minded. Lung Ao Tian walked in. When he heard that something had happened to the people of the Blazing Sword Alliance in the Broad Delight Casino, he immediately rushed over. Alliance Chief. You are here. Alliance Chief, that person killed Chao Lin. Alliance Chief, Chao Lin is dead. As the Alliance Chief of the Blazing Sword Alliance, when Lung Ao Tian appeared, these people felt a sense of security. It was as if they had found their backbone. Beside Lung Ao Tian, there was a girl, Yi Tianshui. Senior Sister Tianshui. Sister Tianshui. Even Lung Ao Tian was extremely respectful to Yi Tianshui. Naturally, these people would also respect Yi Tianshui. Moreover, Yi Tianshui's reputation was slightly above Lung Ao Tian's. Although it could be said that there was not much difference in strength, Yi Tianshui was a standard beauty, so her reputation was naturally much higher than Lung Ao Tian's. Yi Tianshui faintly greeted. They were all isolated by the soldiers. However, they could see that Li Zongjio was executing the needle technique. Dead. Chao Lin is dead. Who did it? Lung Ao Tian was extremely shocked when he heard this. However, his eyes quickly became ferocious. No matter how one put it, Chao Lin was a member of his subordinates. Now that he had been killed by someone in this place, as the chief of the alliance, he would naturally not let the murderer off so easily. Lung Ao Tian wanted to rush in, but he was stopped by the soldiers. Do you know who I am? Get out of my way. Lung Ao Tian directly sent out a wave of yuan energy, sending the people in front of him flying. When he walked out, his body was filled with murderous aura. Li Zongjio, today, either you die or I die. Lung Ao Tian unsheathed his long sword and suddenly stabbed towards Li Zongjio. The sword light was so fast that even Tai-Fi could not block it. Just as the sword was about to kill Tai-Fi. However, a sword light flew over and landed in front of Lung Ao Tian, forcing him to retreat. The two swords crossed in the sky and exploded with a sharp sound. Tianshui, what are you doing? Are you trying to protect him? Lung Ao Tian's figure landed on the ground. When he saw the sword, he knew who had stopped him. He was extremely shocked and furious on the spot. He even thought that Yi Tianshui was worried about Li Zongjio. After all, the two of them were from the same hometown. If Yi Tianshui could not bear to kill Li Zongjio, then Lung Ao Tian would definitely not be soft-hearted if Yi Tianshui stood in front of him. Although a confidant was important, a brother was equally important. Chapter 540. Take a good look before you act. Yi Tianshui put away the long sword in his hand. Lung Ao Tian seemed to have been blinded by anger and hatred. Ordinary people would not understand what Li Zongjio was doing, but could it be that Lung Ao Tian could not see it? Lung Ao Tian looked in the direction of Li Zongjio when he heard Yi Tianshui's words. It was in Li Zongjio's hands. Chao Lin's originally cold aura was gradually recovering at this moment. It was as if Chao Lin's aura, which was about to dissipate, had become a faintly discernible straight line. When this straight line grew stronger and stronger, it would be the time to revive Chao Lin's aura. The silver needles in Li Zongjio's hands were like embroidery needles, constantly mending the places where the aura leaked out. The process was obviously very complicated. In fact, in the eyes of ordinary people, this was simply an impossible thing. This, after taking a closer look, Lung Ao Tian's heart was filled with shock. What resurrection! What miraculous hands! It was not as shocking as seeing Li Zongjio slowly recovering Chao Lin's aura. Li Zongjio was saving Chao Lin's life. Although Lung Ao Tian could not believe it, he saw it clearly. Fortunately, Yi Tianshui had stopped him at the crucial moment. Otherwise, it would have been a huge mistake. In fact, what Lung Ao Tian did not know was that Yi Tianshui had saved Lung Ao Tian's life. Although saving Chao Lin's life was a relatively important matter, Li Zhongjio could not be unprepared for the situation around him. Therefore, he had to be prepared. If Lung Ao Tian had attacked just now, the vast flying knife would have instantly taken his life. This was Li Zhongjio's confidence. He was good at saving people, but he was even better at killing people. Wan Zhong's heart felt bad. He couldn't see the situation with his cultivation, but he could clearly feel that Li Zhongjio seemed to be about to succeed. No one would dare to believe that Li Zhongjio could succeed. If Chao Lin really woke up, wouldn't that mean that he would reveal his own matters? No, he could not let Li Zhongjio succeed. Who knew what Li Zhongjio could do? He had to stop Li Zhongjio. Wind Thunder Breaking Pearl. Wan Zhong held a wind and thunder-shattering pearl in his hand. This thunderstorm bead was an yuan item developed by the 7-star fire room. It only required a trace of yuan energy to create a violent storm within a radius of 10 meters. Within this 10-meter radius, all yuan energy would fall into a state of chaos. Therefore, he decided to wait until the critical moment to throw out the wind thunder destruction bead. It would definitely destroy everything in front of him and he would be safe. To kill a person who had already died once, it would be an easy task. That was obviously an easier task. It would be best if he could bury Li Zhongjio in it as well. Boss, what is this kid doing? Liu Pei's strength was not as good as Wang Ding's. At this moment, Wang Ding was also staring ahead intently, as if he was witnessing a miracle. Shoo, shut up. Wang Ding was obviously very focused and did not allow anyone to disturb him. When he saw half of it, Wang Ding was obviously exhausted. At this moment, he rubbed his eyes and admitted defeat. No, it's too strong. It's too strong. With my strength, just observing it for a while is already exhausting. If that kid were to use it, how much energy would he consume? This young man's realm is far above mine. He's worthy of being an alchemist bestowed by the emperor. Wang Ding's heart was filled with awe. Those who could survive in King City basically had some skills. Wang Ding was not stupid. After staying in the city guard for so long, he was only a small battalion commander. There were only so many people under him. Every time he was sent out, it was a thankless job. If there were no other variables, his life would probably come to an end. In addition, he did not have any strong background. On this basis, he might be directly taken down by others. Therefore, Wang Ding was clear in his heart that he had to find another way out. When he saw Li Zhongjio's strength, Wang Ding already had a plan in his heart. As long as such a person did not die, he would definitely be a great figure in the future. It moved, his toes moved. Everyone observed for a long time. Some people were able to understand the essence of it, but some people felt as if they were watching a boring show. Suddenly, Liu Pei exclaimed. Everyone immediately looked over and saw that Chao Lin's toes trembled. Seeing the situation, he hurriedly shouted out. Hearing those words, everyone looked over. Sure enough, Chao Lin's toes trembled. Immediately, all of them felt astonished and shocked. It really moved. Even the dead had been brought back to life. How is this possible? Wan Zhong didn't dare to believe it. Li Zhongjio must have done some strange magic on Chao Lin's body. How could someone come back from the dead? Such a thing, and under the witness of so many pairs of eyes, how could it be possible? Seeing Chao Lin's feet tremble. Soon, Chao Lin's aura was connected by Li Zhongjio. Yi Tianshui's gaze stopped on Li Zhongjio. It was really unbelievable. Even if it was something that had really happened in front of him, it would still take him half a day to recover from it. Originally, Yi Tianshui had thought that he would be the hope of Luoxia City. If he returned to the city in the future, he would be able to lead Luoxia City to glory. However, when he came out, he realized that the water in this world was too deep. Although the strength of a Sky Origin ancestor was almost the top expert in Luoxia City. Even a Sky Origin general was enough to stir up a storm. However, within the Sacred Flame Royal City, the Sky Origin ancestor realm was nothing. As long as one was an ordinary person, they would basically be at the Sky Origin ancestor realm. Chapter 541. Terrifying Yuan power instantly exploded. Taifai did not escape. Instead, he released his Yuan power in an attempt to protect Li Zongjio, who was behind him. Taifai decided to let Taifai endure the power in front of him. However, the violent explosion that he had imagined did not occur. All the power also stopped at this moment. If the wind lightning bead were to explode, the metal pieces around it would spread out in all directions. However, the wind lightning bead in front of him was not damaged at all. Originally, the wind lightning bead was about to explode. However, the tyrannical power directly suppressed the destructive power of the wind lightning bead. It was as if a person's ultimate move was forcefully shoved back. Such a method would be incomparably shocking to anyone. It didn't explode? How is this possible? Yi Tianshui and Lung Ao Tian's swords also fell to the side and did not cause any effect. In fact, they subconsciously wanted to resist the power of the energy after the explosion. However, they did not expect that it would be blocked by a mysterious power. The source of this mysterious power was none other than Lin Feng. It was Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio pressed down with one hand and directly suppressed the strength of the wind lightning bead. This caused the latter to be unable to unleash even the slightest bit of anger. Tell me, who was it that killed you? Li Zongjio grabbed Chao Lin and lifted him up. When Chao Lin was caught, he woke up and realized that he was still alive. He immediately looked in the direction of Wan Zhong with an incomparably hateful gaze. Wan Zhong, I have no enmity with you. Why do you want to kill me? Chao Lin's furious roar had also released all of his anger and resentment. He could not wait to take the life of the person in front of him. Wan Zhong, who was stopped by Chao Lin, also panicked at this moment. His legs instantly went soft. However, he still rolled and crawled as he ran into the distance. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. How can you be alive? How is this possible? Wan Zhong roared again and again. At this moment, only by escaping himself would he have a chance to survive. Otherwise, he would definitely be beaten to death by these people. Immediately, Wan Zhong also quickly fled into the distance. Catch him, Li Zongjio said indifferently. Wang Ding and the rest did not even need to act. Taifai's figure flashed and chased after Wan Zhong. Boom! Wan Zhong pushed through the crowd, but before he could run a few steps, he was directly captured by Taifai. Wan Zhong threw it in front of Li Zongjio. Everyone looked at Wan Zhong, who was in front of them. It seemed as though everyone present had been fooled by Wan Zhong. They couldn't wait to tear Wan Zhong's bones apart. Wan Zhong himself was also quite scared. Don't kill me, don't kill me. After that, Chao Lin also testified to Wan Zhong face to face and described the entire process. Lung Ao Tian and the rest did not expect Wan Zhong to be so vicious. You brat. So you are the main culprit. Take him down. Wang Ding immediately ordered when he saw the situation. The soldiers under him immediately rushed forward, but were stopped by Lung Ao Tian. Sir, please wait. Lung Ao Tian blocked in front of Wan Zhong. Although Wan Zhong had committed the crime of murder, and the target of the murder was his own junior brother from the same sect, the nature of this action was rather vile. However, Wan Zhong was still a disciple of their martial world pavilion. If he were to be executed outside, it would be the martial world pavilion that would lose face. Thus, it wasn't anything dazzling. No matter what, Wan Zhong's actions are indeed suspected of murder. However, Wan Zhong and Chao Lin are both disciples of the Imperial Martial Pavilion. I hope that Sir can be lenient and let our Imperial Martial Pavilion handle this matter. Lung Ao Tian said. Wang Ding heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that. Although the evidence was conclusive, and even the dead man had spoken, there was naturally no way to escape. However, Wan Zhong was still a disciple of the Imperial Martial Pavilion. If he beheaded all the disciples of the Imperial Martial Pavilion, it would be very impressive. On the surface, it looked like a very impressive act. However, if there were any problems in the future, it would be hard to say. Therefore, if this hot potato could be transferred out, it would naturally be a very good thing. However, he could not agree too early. Otherwise, people would think that he was a coward. Therefore, on the surface, he had to be a little cold. Yes, The Imperial Martial Pavilion is also a place of national treasure. In addition, there are many suspicious points in this case. Let's bring him back first and make a decision after the matter is investigated clearly. However, Wang Zhong's identity as a suspect must be confirmed at this moment. The interrogation will be carried out in 3 days. Wang Ding was also smart. With a few words, he settled this matter. Not only did he not lose face, but he also handled this matter very well. Wang Zhong heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that he still had a way out and did not have to die on the spot. However, just as Wang Zhong heaved a sigh of relief, a hand suddenly grabbed Wang Zhong. With a bang, Wang Zhong was directly placed on the table where he was just now. You came to my territory to kill someone and framed me? You want to take him away without even asking anything. What do you think this place is? All of them had thought of it, but they had neglected Li Zongjio. With Li Zongjio's strength, it was impossible for him to let this matter pass so easily. Today, there must be an explanation. I saved a person. Naturally, I have to kill a person. Li Zongjio said indifferently. Wang Zhong, who was lying on the table, was like a sheep waiting to be slaughtered. He did not expect that one day he would lie on the chopping board and be at the mercy of others. Li Zongjio, if you have something to say, let's talk nicely. Do you know the consequences of killing Wang Zhong? Before Leng Aotian could finish his words, he saw Li Zongjio directly shoot several flying needles into Wang Zhong's body. Suddenly, Wang Zhong's body stiffened on the spot. He fell to the ground, unable to move. At this moment, there was no other way. Wang Zhong lay on the table and felt that his aura was flowing out little by little, like a deflated balloon. No matter what he did, there was no way to stop his aura from disappearing. The only thing that could be seen was his eyes. His eyes were filled with reluctance. He did not want to die. However, it was a pity that he had schemed against Li Zongjio. He casually threw Wang Zhong's cold body on the ground. Wang Zhong's death could be said to be a very cruel way because during the process, his death perception was magnified by dozens of times and the speed was also slowed down by dozens of times. Therefore, he could clearly feel the process of his death. How did Li Zongjio know? In his previous life, Li Zongjio had also tried this needle technique. Li Zongjio himself could clearly feel the feeling of death, so much so that he almost could not wake up. Therefore, since Li Zongjio had personally experienced it, he naturally wanted these people to have a taste of it. You killed Wang Zhong. Leng Aotian was shocked when he saw this scene. This Li Zongjio was a little too fearless. He killed people just like that. Do I need your permission to kill people? Li Zongjio's eyes made Leng Aotian feel real fear. This was not a gaze that a person of his age should have. It was so sharp that it made it difficult for others to look at him. This person killed people. I have already cleaned him up for you. Now you can release my people. Li Zongjio said indifferently. Until now, only Taifai had been released. The 6-headed butchers and the others were still tied up on the ground. However, the people watching over them were slightly loosened. Wang Ding's brain was not enough. You spent so much effort to save him, but now you've killed another person. Do you think you can call it even just like that? Regardless of whether Wang Zhong killed people or not, Li Zongjio himself did not have the authority to enforce the law. Wang Ding glanced at Li Zongjio and then looked at the people around him. Today, these big shots deliberately came to make things difficult for him. However, Wang Ding still had to settle this matter. Imperial alchemist Li Zongjio, assist this official in killing the murderer Wang Zhong. Once this case is over, bring Wang Zhong's body back. Since Wang Zhong was dead, there was no point in saying anything. Therefore, Wang Ding might as well do Li Zongjio a favor and give him credit. Of course, he also kept an eye out. If there was any blame in the future, it would be Li Zongjio who did it. It would not have much to do with him. Chapter 542. Even Leng Aotian and Yi Tianshui couldn't do anything about Wang Ding's decisiveness. After all, Wang Ding had given him face in the beginning. Now that he was dead, Wang Ding had to report back to him. However, it also confirmed that Wang Zhong had killed someone. In that case, There would be a storm in the Imperial Martial Pavilion. The subordinates also released Li Zongjio's men one after another. As for the imprisonment, it was naturally left unsettled. It was likely that this matter would be over and no one would pursue it. However, there was one person who wouldn't let this matter go so easily. The 9th prince is backing you, right? Li Zongjio walked in front of Leng Outyin and said plainly. Leng Outyin was taken aback when he heard that. What was Li Zongjio up to again? Nothing good happened in the hands of Li Zongjio. 1 billion purple yuan. Get your 9th prince to prepare it. I'll come and get it when I'm free. Li Zongjio said plainly. It sounded like he was going to find trouble with the 9th prince. Li Zongjio, what are you thinking? You can't say such things so casually. Yi Tianshui immediately stepped forward to persuade Li Zongjio when he heard what he said. Going against the 9th prince was definitely an unwise action. It was no different from courting death. How could ordinary people challenge the authority of the royal family? They only needed to say a word and move their fingers to take your life. I've already made an exception by letting you people go today. Yi Tianshui, your grandfather asked me to take care of you, but it doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want in front of me. If you want to live, you'll have to practice your skills first. Li Zongjio looked at Yi Tianshui and said plainly. Obviously, Li Zongjio wasn't very satisfied with Yi Tianshui's performance. He wasn't strong enough, but he still had to poke his nose into other people's business. She heard Li Zongjio scolding her instead. Yi Tianshui was so angry that he wanted to fight with Li Zongjio. However, she still forcefully endured it because from the beginning, Li Zongjio's strength was indeed above hers. However, this did not mean that Li Zongjio could act recklessly. Also, your imperial sword art sucks. Li Zongjio said. Judging from Li Zongjio's tone, he seemed to have some understanding of Yi Tianshui's sword-wielding art. However, Yi Tianshui wasn't convinced. You are stronger than me, but that doesn't mean that your sword manipulation technique is better than mine. Yi Tianshui had been studying the imperial sword manipulation technique for several years. He had poured all his talent and energy into it. However, Li Zongjio said that it didn't seem to be much, and it was even in a very bad state. How could he tolerate this? He wanted to argue with Li Zongjio, but Leng Outyin stopped him. Li Zongjio's strength wasn't something they could compare to. He didn't take the invitations of the princes seriously at all. He even killed a disciple of the Imperial Martial Pavilion in front of the city guards. In front of hundreds of people, he brought a dead person back to life. Such a battle record was simply unbelievable. Young master, please wait. Please accept our respect. Li Zongjio waved his hand and led Taifai and the others back. However, such a thing had happened in such a short period of time. Of course, they had to reorganize. Otherwise, who would dare to come to the Bue casino if things kept happening? The ones who stopped Li Zongjio were the Chao couple. The change in the outcome was also very shocking. At first, they thought that Li Zongjio was the murderer. However, they didn't expect that Li Zongjio would use such a miraculous method to revive Chao Lin, who had been dead for a long time, in front of everyone. The two elders even pulled Chao Lin to kneel in front of Li Zongjio. They did this to express their gratitude. What's the use of kneeling? Come to my casino after graduation. Li Zongjio glanced at them. If kneeling could save a life, many people would be willing to kneel for a long time. Therefore, this was simply a useless action. They might as well come to his casino to work. If Brother Li doesn't mind, I will return to the casino after graduation and repay Brother Li for saving my life. Chao Lin said. When a person was gradually pulled back from the edge of death, it was a magical feeling. It was hard to describe what it was like. However, there was no doubt that he would have an extreme trust in Li Zongjio. It was this kind of trust that made Chao Lin so loyal to Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio waved his hand and dispersed the people around. It was a good night, but these people forced so many things to happen. They really knew how to cause trouble. What's more, the Great Delight Casino's tough approach today shocked everyone. Li Zongjio's strength was also rumored to be amazing. Originally, the Bue Casino was already on the verge of death. If it had been a little later, all of their heads would have fallen. However, Li Zongjio appeared and turned the tide. In the end, he even killed a student of the martial arts pavilion. Fortunately, Wan Zhong had died in Li Zongjiu's hands. If he had been brought back, Li Zongjiu would not have been able to kill him. If he had been brought back, he would have known that Wan Zhong had secretly harmed his fellow disciples. Wan Zhong's cultivation would have been destroyed, then he would be trapped in the withered leaf forest for 20 to 30 years and enjoy this lonely torture. Dying like this would be too easy for him. The Biwei Casino was able to escape death this time thanks to Li Zongjiu's extraordinary medical skills. Some people naturally didn't believe it, but many people present saw it with their own eyes. Therefore, Li Zongjiu's medical skills were recorded by many people. Even many of the city's influential people had heard of Li Zongjiu's name. They wanted to ask Li Zongjiu to come for a consultation. However, no one knew when this news had spread in the market. If Li Zongjiu were to treat a patient, he would need to pay at least 10 billion purple yuan for the consultation fee. This was only the most basic consultation fee. The amount of money that would be spent on the follow-up treatment was immeasurable. Qi family. When Qi Yanran heard about Li Zongjiu's deeds, she, who was painstakingly cultivating, couldn't help but smile charmingly. As expected of Li Zongjiu. However, such a flamboyant character would definitely bring him a big disaster. There were even rumors outside that Li Zongjiu was preparing to find trouble with the ninth prince. As for what kind of trouble, no one knew for the time being. Everyone's opinions were also different. The news about Li Zongjiu in the city had also spread for a long time. The master of this news was currently in the 5 Elements Yuan house, refining his own level 5 advanced elixir. Although it was only a small realm higher than the level 5 intermediate elixir. However, if he wanted to achieve it, it would be more difficult than reaching the level 5 intermediate elixir. Even Li Zongjiu had to borrow the power of his origin spirit to be able to refine this elixir. The majestic white dragon origin spirit wrapped around Li Zongjiu's body, constantly injecting power into the Azura cauldron in front of him through his palms. Boom! A demonic flame rose from the Azura cauldron, melting the devil camel flower bit by bit. The King Blood Demon Lotus elixir naturally requires the blood of a beast king. There was a small transparent bottle in Li Zongjiu's hand. It wasn't an easy task for ordinary people to find the blood of a king-level meta beast. This was because once the blood was exposed, the meta chi would quickly disappear. Li Zongjiu had a Howling Moon Wolf King under his command. It could be said that he could get as much blood as he wanted. He poured the Howling Moon Wolf King's blood into the cauldron. The Azura cauldron also began the slow refining process. Li Zongjiu sat cross-legged. The refining process was slow because his current cultivation was not enough, so it was impossible to speed it up. Instead, it would cause his origin energy to be consumed quickly, leading to the failure of refining the elixir later. Hey! I didn't expect that there would be a few mid-grade origin stones in Han Wuxiu's storage ring. With nothing to do, Li Zongjiu rummaged through Han Wuxiu's storage ring and found the mid-grade primordial stones. Although there were not many of them, they were not something that could be bought with money. One had to reach a certain level of cultivation before one could come into contact with the primordial stones. For example, Wuxue Elixir Sect was really lucky to find so many origin stones. In addition, Li Zongjiu did not care at all, so he gave the origin stones to these people. With the primordial stones in hand, the success rate of the refinement would be greatly increased. Originally, I only had an 80% chance of success, but now I have a 90% chance. Chapter 543. Using the Vitality Stone to replenish one's Yuan power was naturally very effective. At the same time, the Vitality Stone would constantly pour Yuan power into one's body, cleansing one's meridians to a certain extent. Although Li Zongjiu's cultivation level was high, his body was still the same as before. In Li Zongjiu's previous life, during the process of cultivation, he had refined countless pills and tempered himself countless times. That was how he had achieved what he had today. Although Li Zongjiu's cultivation level was high, it was still very difficult for him to reach that level if his body's quality did not keep up. Fortunately, Li Zongjiu had cultivated the ancient golden tyrant body technique. In the process, his body's quality had also improved. Just as Li Zongjio was concentrating on refining elixirs, the Special Envoy Department finally found the bodies of Han Wuxiu and the others. Unfortunately, Han Wuxiu's body was already deformed. In the past few days, they had also caught a man who had been holding a Special Envoy's waste token and swindling others. This man was Blackie, whom Huang He had been looking for. Unfortunately, Blackie found Huang He dead on the spot the next day. Blackie also had other people's waste tokens in his hands that day. He did not hand them over directly because the waste tokens themselves were not cheap. If they were to be sold in the black market, they might be able to fetch a good price. It just so happened that they were a little short of money these few days, so they were prepared to go to a trustworthy trading house in the black market to sell the item. However, they did not expect that they would be immediately captured by a large group of special envoys the moment they saw the light of day. They were finally sent here. Tell me, how did you get this item? A cold light flashed in Su Yan's eyes. Dozens of special envoys had been killed without leaving behind a complete corpse. A large number of Blood Strike Guards' corpses were also found at the scene. It was unclear what had happened, and no one knew what had happened. If Qingyuan Manor was also involved, wouldn't it be even more of a headache for them? After capturing Blackie, Su Yan had countless ways to deal with him. He asked Blackie to speak. But, my lord, please spare my life. This. I picked it up. Xiao He was almost scared to death by the lineup in front of him. However, Blackie's experience also told him that he could never admit that he had stolen this item. If he did, he would definitely die. Very good. Gui Tu-san, I'll leave him to you. Make him tell me everything he knows. Yes, sir. A stooped old man walked out from the darkness. Soon after, the old man spread out the cowhide in his hands on the table. Among the cowhide, there were some small and exquisite knives. On the knives, there were some strange marks. Obviously, these knives were not used for cooking. Gui Tu-san's name resounded like thunder in the ears of those in this line of work. This was because the name Gui Tu-san basically represented death. Gui Tu-san used to be a sculptor. He liked to carve things like human bodies, but later on, his style suddenly changed. He liked to carve on human bones, and it was the kind that had blood on it. Blackie could feel the cold blades slowly flowing across his skin. He also felt his body suddenly tense up. Don't kill me. I'll speak. Blackie was nothing more than a loafer. Even some of the more vicious people in the underworld would be afraid of his aura and strength. Not to mention a terrifying general like Gui Tu-san. He was simply the representative of the death god. After Blackie explained everything, Gui Tu-san used his own methods. Gui Tu-san also used his own means. After all, there was no other way to guarantee that what Little Black said was true. In the end, Blackie died little by little in pain. His end was really tragic. However, no one pitied Blackie. Su Yan sorted out the information in front of him. It's this kid again, Li Zongjio. Su Yan still remembered that he was invited to the Yi mansion by Yi Lantian. Among the names he submitted, Li Zongjio was on the list. Although the situation at that time was not good for Li Zongjio at all. But who would have thought that Li Zongjio would do so many earth-shattering things later on? Not only did he offend Yi Lantian in public, but he also offended Sima Xingyan. Later on, it was said that he also humiliated Han Wuxiu in public. The first time, Su Yan was also present. At that time, he only thought that Li Zongjio and Han Wuxiu were both young and impetuous, so there was a small fight between them. It was not a big deal. And now, Han Wuxiu obviously had something on him, so he lured Huang He to make a move and plan to kill Li Zongjio. But in the end, he did not know why. Li Zongjio, on the other hand, was safe and sound. But Han Wuxiu was dead. Not only that, but the Blood Strike Guards were also dead. There are many suspicious points in this. 3. But according to Su Yan's understanding of Han Wuxiu, it was obvious that Han Wuxiu had secretly colluded with the people of Qingyuan Mountain Villa to use the power of Qingyuan Mountain Villa to get rid of Li Zongjio. But what he did not expect was that Li Zongjio was too strong. Not only was he unharmed, but he also killed his opponent without leaving a single trace. He went for wool and came home shorn. This was the most tragic outcome. Su Yen had already gone through the entire process in his mind. He clearly knew what kind of role Han Wuxiu played in this. However, he didn't know how to write this report. If we could find Li Zongjiu's demon camel flower, we would definitely be able to convict Li Zongjiu. But now it seems that there is no chance. Even Huang He is dead. The dead tell no tales. Su Yen let out a long sigh. Anyone related to this matter had been killed by Li Zongjiu. On this point, Li Zongjiu was very decisive in doing things. It was unbelievable. Not only did he want to take revenge, but he also wanted to eliminate all of them. To be able to do this so flawlessly, there must be someone guiding him from behind. Or, this kid looks young, but is actually a real veteran. Su Yen thought to himself. Since Han Wuxiu's incident had been investigated to this point, Li Zongjiu would have to announce it to the public. However, if Li Zongjiu's suspicions were to be revealed, he would definitely become Li Zongjiu's enemy. Recently, this young man had been in the limelight. His position in the city was very stable. Therefore, Su Yen had to think about it carefully. After all, it was just a job. Moreover, Han Wuxiu was not related to him at all. If he really angered Li Zongjiu because of such an insignificant person, it was obviously not a wise thing to do. Then he might not be able to please either side. Looks like this matter has to be suppressed. Qingyuan Manor is also involved. I'm afraid things are not that simple. Su Yen thought to himself. While Su Yen was collecting the corpses, he had also discovered that the blood strike guards who had participated in this bloody battle were not weak. There was even a 6-copper blood strike guard, who was a Yuan monarch powerhouse. He was someone who could kill a Yuan monarch powerhouse. That person had to be a Yuan monarch powerhouse. This meant that the faction behind Li Zongjiu also had the power to kill a Yuan monarch powerhouse. Su Yen himself had not reached that level yet. If something had happened to this Yuan monarch powerhouse, some special forces would have to be mobilized. They might even have to work together to suppress the situation. This was not a simple matter. A ruffian at the Yuan monarch level was a huge threat. There was also a special department in the dynasty to deal with such people. The Special Envoy Department was mainly responsible for some of the most basic public security issues. Su Yen did not want to put himself in danger. Therefore, he had also concealed everything about Li Zongjiu. He only said that there was a mysterious force involved, and the reason for the outbreak was the appearance of suspected stolen goods. However, if he wanted to find out more information, he would have to ask Qingyuan Manor. Chapter 544. Qingyuan Manor. They didn't have the ability to do so now, so they could only stand aside and let the matter hang. However, the death of Han Wuxiu and the others was announced to the public that they had died in the line of duty. In the process, an extremely important case was solved and Han Wuxiu and the others were portrayed as heroes. Concealing the truth was one of the methods they were extremely adept at. In a room of the 5 Elements Yuan house. In the house beside him, there was also a slight change. Even though the house had been strengthened by a formation, one could still clearly feel the power that was spreading out from it. Everyone was shocked to the core. Buzz. Li Zongjiu gently opened the Azura cauldron in his hand, brushed away the layer of defensive barrier on the surface, and extracted the power inside bit by bit. Finally, the white mist formed into an elixir in his palm. Originally, it was just a cloud of medicinal mist. At this moment, what appeared in Li Zongjiu's hand was an elixir. This was a type of elixir that was about to reach the level and realm of a grade 6 elixir. Once an elixir reached the 6th grade, it would no longer appear in the form of a solid elixir, but a kind of power that was born from nothingness. With a flick of the finger, the elixir in his hand could merge into the air. It would completely disappear. It was a kind of vaporized shape. Therefore, a 6th grade elixir was very precious, because they could form a kind of space by themselves. When you entered their space, you wouldn't even be able to find their existence. Therefore, even in some ruins, a 6th grade elixir was something that could only be found by chance. If you were fated with it, the 6th grade elixir might automatically appear in front of you. If it doesn't approve of you, then even if you turn the entire space upside down, you won't be able to find it. That was why it was so rare. The elixir in Li Zongjiu's hand had not reached that level, but its strength was not weak. Moreover, when the elixir was formed, it formed the effect of the elixir. Therefore, it was inevitable that people would be surprised. Li Zongjiu himself was very surprised. When he opened the elixir, he was also slightly surprised. It seems that my alchemy skills have improved. Even Li Zongjiu himself felt that it was inconceivable. Logically speaking, Li Zongjiu's alchemy level had already reached the pinnacle. However, when he displayed it today, he felt that he was even closer to the true pinnacle of alchemy than in his previous life. It seemed like it was because of the Genius Pavilion. It was possible that his alchemy level had also improved imperceptibly during that process. The two of them complemented each other. The effect of this Genius Pavilion is indeed not weak. It seems that I have to go and take a look often if I have the chance. Even Li Zongjiu wanted to pry into the secrets behind the Genius Tower. Just what exactly existed at the highest level? He must uncover it. Now, let me see the effects of this royal blood demon Buddha Dan. Li Zongjiu kept the Azura cauldron. He sat down cross-legged and took out the royal blood demon Buddha pill. He put it into his mouth. When his body's condition was adjusted to its peak and his aura gradually became active, he swallowed the elixir. Gulp. The royal blood demon Buddha pill immediately flowed into Li Zongjiu's body. This was a very powerful elixir. Even a Yuan King elite would have to be prepared if they wanted to consume it. Otherwise, the elixir would definitely break through their bodies. The effect of a high-grade grade 5 elixir was no joke. In addition, this elixir was personally refined by Li Zongjiu, so its effect was slightly better than that refined by ordinary people. Not only that, but when Li Zongjiu used the White Dragon Origin Spirit to protect his body, the elixir's effect was immediately stimulated. Boom! The power of the elixir was immediately released in his body. It was as if that terrifying power had surged into every corner of his body. Boom! The berserk power poured into his body, causing Li Zongjiu to feel suffocated. The boundless power was like a rubber ball that suddenly poured in a large amount of gas. If this continued, Li Zongjiu's body would very likely explode on the spot. Ancient Golden Tyrant Body Art. White God Fu. Blood Spirit Realm. Li Zongjiu immediately used the 3 great cultivation techniques. Because the energy was too abundant, he had to use this technique while exhausting this large amount of energy to a certain extent. Only then could he stabilize his body's condition. Outside the 5 elements Yuan building. Immediately, several loud rumbling noises were heard. Frightening energies immediately gushed out from the various rooms of the 5 elements Yuan house. Some of the people who were still training were immediately woken up by this. Boom! Boom! What's going on? Why is the aura of the 5 elements Yuan building going berserk? When some experts appeared, they would often cause the energy of the 5 elements Yuan building to become chaotic. In this way, it would affect the people on the other floors. At that time, if any fatal problems occurred, the 5 elements Yuan building would not be able to bear the consequences. What happened? What's the situation now? When the person in charge of the 5 elemental Yuan tower appeared, he began to interrogate them. When he found out that the aura was coming from a sovereign training room, he immediately gave the order to strengthen the formation of the sovereign training room by 10 times. Although the price of strengthening the array was extremely high, the 5 elements Yuan building's priority was to stabilize the situation. However, the most important thing for the 5 elements Yuan house was to stabilize this chaotic situation. Otherwise, it would be terrible if the people in the other training rooms died one after another. In the future, the 5 elements Yuan building might even close down. Once the formation was reinforced, the other rooms would be less affected as well. However, everyone immediately investigated the situation of Li Zongjiu's room. What exactly was going on? Why were there so many situations? Could it be that someone had purposely come to cause trouble? After the information was brought out, only a name was displayed. Li Zongjiu. The person in charge of the 5 elements Yuan building frowned when he saw the name list in his hand. Before this, he really did not know who Li Zongjiu was. Could it be that he was an expert that suddenly appeared? However, when his subordinate handed over the information of Li Zongjio to him, the person in charge clearly knew that Li Zongjio was actually such an incredible person. Not simple. Li Zongjio took 5 days to refine the elixir. In these 5 days, many things had happened as well. The most obvious change that everyone paid attention to was the change in the upper echelons of the 7 Stars Fire Room. Some time ago, the Saber Axe Pavilion's treasury was attacked by a mysterious person. Even the pavilion master was directly beheaded. As a result, the Saber Axe Pavilion itself was immediately divided into 2 factions. One faction controlled the secret of the giant saber's forging technique, while the other controlled the secret of the giant axe's forging technique. Both sides had different opinions. Moreover, the people of the giant axe pavilion advocated revenge, so they attacked the upper echelons of the 7 Stars Fire Room again and again like crazy. On the other hand, the giant saber pavilion continued to maintain a small facade of the Saber Axe Pavilion and continued to do business. It seemed that they wanted to make money peacefully. However, the new executive steward of the 7 Stars Fire Room, who was also a disciple of the Song family, had fallen into a river due to drunkenness when he went out to seek pleasure. He drowned. Everyone knew that it must be the people of the Giant Axe Pavilion who took action. After a period of time, the 7 Stars Fire Room entered a state of preparation for war. In the end, there was no suitable candidate, so they had no choice but to invite Song Jiyu back. It was only the death of a few management members, but it directly became chaotic. Among the younger generation, there was no one who could take on such a big responsibility. In the end, they could only push Song Jiyu out to deal with the current situation. As a result, Song Jiyu only took office for 2 days and reached a consensus with the Giant Saber Pavilion. They joined forces to eliminate the people of the Giant Axe Pavilion and snatched the forging technique of the Giant Axe Pavilion. The Giant Saber Pavilion was actually under Song Jiyu's wing. In the end, it became a new Saber Axe Pavilion, but it was under Song Jiyu's name. This matter seemed very simple and direct. However, to achieve such a result, it was unknown how much effort Song Jiyu had spent and how many methods she had used. After Song Jiyu took office, not only did she easily solve the problem, but she also directly strengthened the strength of the 7 Stars Fire Room. As for how she did it, the people of the Song family did not care. After all, the business world was like a battlefield. It was a war to begin with. One did not look at the process, only the result. The people who died were worthless. Now, Song Jiyu had once again become the executive manager of the 7 Stars Fire Room. She held the power and at the same time, cleaned up a few competitors. This was a very beautiful move. It was hard to believe that this woman was actually so powerful. Senior Inghu, this set of Raging Dragon capturing flames was used by young Master Li last time. Because there was some wear and tear, our 7 Stars Fire Room has repaired it. Please pass it on. Xiao Zhao held the big metal box in her hands. During this period of time, if it were not for Inghu's help, the young lady's plan would not have been so easily realized. Okay, no problem. Inghu took the Raging Dragon capturing flames. Miss Xiao Zhao, is there anything else? Seeing that Xiao Zhao was still standing at the door and had not left, Inghu could not help but ask. Senior Inghu, the young lady said that if Senior Inghu does not mind, the 7 Stars Fire Room is willing to take care of everything for Senior Inghu. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.